All right, I'd like to call to order County Board meeting of Thursday, August 22nd at 7 p.m. Call to order, please. Roll call, please.
Michaels. Here. Mitchell. Petrie. Here. Quisenberry. Here. Richards. Here. Rosales. Schrader. Here. Schwartz. Here. Alex. Here. Berkson. Here. Carter. Here. Coert. Esri. Here. Harper. Here. Hartke. Here. James. Here. Jay. Here. Kibler. Here. Langenheim. Here. Maxwell. Here. McGuire. Here. Kurtz.
Here. We have a quorum. Thank you. Our prayer this. Mr. Mitchell is here. He just missed the roll call. Smile, Max. Thank you. There you go. Mr. Rosales is also in attendance. All right. Our prayer this evening, please take a moment. Each season brings something new for us to see and enjoy. With sunny days and rainy days, our crops grow larger. Fruit and vegetables ripen, ready for us to harvest. Thank you for all the food we have to eat. Let us remember people who may not have enough. Help us to be kind to others in our thoughts, words, and deeds. Amen. Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Can you please read the notice of the meeting?
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois, will convene on August 22nd, 2013, 7 p.m. in the Lyle Shields Meeting Room, Perkins Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purpose of allowing and ordering payments of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting, which said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business.
Thank you. I'd like a motion to accept Mr. Esri, Mr. Mitchell. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I'd like a motion for approval of the agenda and addendum, please. So move Mr. James and second Mr. Carter. Do we have any changes in the agenda? Chris?
Resolution 8649 for the second addendum from the Circuit Clerk's office is being pulled.
Being pulled?
Being pulled.
Thank you. Any other? We are just going to make one change on the. Ms. Petrie, you wanted to? Yes, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I requested that the Local Food Policy Council presentation be moved up a bit in the agenda.
Moved before the nursing home report?
Thank you very much.
Would be fine. Okay, we'll approve that. Any other changes to the addenda or the agenda? Yeah.
I would like to have item 3 from ELOC under consent pulled.
Well, we'll get to consent agenda in a few moments, James. Any other changes to the agenda at this point? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. You'll notice date and time of the next regular standing meetings and committees, A, B, and C, Committee of the Whole, and the county board meetings. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry.
There's also, it should be listed, but it's not, a county board study session on September 24th, Tuesday.
That's the jail study.
That's ILPP.
Yeah, that'll be the, for the public, that's the jail study report from ILPP coming to the full county board at that time, the completed report. Thank you. All right, let's move to the consent agenda. 6 p.m. 6 p.m. This room. James, we're on the consent agenda. You wanted to remove?
I would like item 3 under ELOC on the consent agenda to be pulled, and that means it probably would be considered as B2.
As B2, A3, B2.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does. Okay, which is A3 consent agenda. All right. Other than that, I'd like a motion to, for the consent agenda passed. Can I have a, Mr. Rosales, second by Mr. James. All in favor? I'm sorry, roll call vote on the consent.
Michaels. Mitchell. Petrie. Quisenberry. Richards. Rosales.
Yes.
Schrader. Schwartz. Alex. Bergson. Carter. Cowart. Esri. Harper. Hartke. James. Jay. Kibler. Langenheim. Maxwell. McGuire. Kurtz.
Yes. Motion carries. Consent agenda is passed. All right, we move on to public participation. We have quite a few tonight. So there are some ground rules that I'd like to go over with each of you. Each participant will have 5 minutes to discuss whatever they wish to. We will have a 1-hour time limit at 5 after 8 for public participation. Thank you, James. First would be Mr. John Houston.
Good evening. My name is John Houston. I live at 509 North Draper in Champaign, Illinois. I have been a resident there along with my wife for 21 years. I am homeowner, pay taxes. My residence falls within the Subdistrict 7 of the Fountainhead Drainage District. I've applied for the Fountainhead Drainage District Commissioner Board this year as I had 2 years ago. Why? To finally get urban representation in a rurally dominated drainage board. At the Committee of the Whole, you've heard many facts. You'll hear many more tonight. I won't go through all those once again because several that'll follow me in the public participation will fill in those. There's been some new developments that I'll also fill you in on. Just a couple of comments, and I'll keep them brief. As Councilman Jay commented so very well at the last Committee of the Whole meeting, that drainage district tiles were never meant to drain residential areas. That is so very true. Draining residential areas is exactly what the Fountainhead Drainage District has tried to do for decades. I can personally attest that this attempt has not gone well. It has not gone well for my property, for my immediate neighbors. My property is only 2 houses from a 36-inch drain tile that I've been paying taxes for the last 20 years. My basement is flooded more than 20 times. I stopped counting. It's even flooded twice in a day. Not only is mine, but my neighbors' basements, crawl spaces, and in one case, a first floor had multiple floods. This is not just messy, unhealthy, decreasing property values, but it can be life-threatening. I want to leave you with a little story. I was approached during one of my floods by a gentleman who asked if he should attempt to enter his flooded basement, as the electrical panel was underwater. Just think about that for a moment. It's not just an inconvenience with a sump pump. In this case, it was life-threatening for this gentleman. What if I hadn't have been there to let him know, no, you don't go down in your basement when the electrical panel is underwater? What a tragedy that would have been. What a liability that would have been for someone. If I felt that agreement was truly imminent to detach Fountainhead from the city, I would not muddy the waters of negotiation at a critical time. All indications I have received as late as 3 hours ago indicate that a huge gap still exists despite optimistic reports that you saw less than 10 days ago. You have a chance tonight to get serious about drainage. True, some statements have said this is between the city and Fountainhead, but reality is this board appoints those commissioners. It's time to get serious about it before there's a real tragedy. Thank you.
Susan Taylor?
Hello? This one. I am Susan Taylor. I live at 1218 West University Avenue in Champaign. I'm a member of the Washington Street Steering Committee, but I'm not speaking tonight as a representative of the committee. I'm speaking as a citizen who pays taxes into the Fountainhead. I have 4 points in particular that I'd like to make. One is the extent of the flooding in Northwest Champaign and the fact that it demands a solution. 2, personally, I'm hoping that we can seek detachment from the Fountainhead, mainly because we have not seen returns from the money that we pay into the Fountainhead. 3, our large section of urban Champaign needs to have representation on the board who directs the expenditures of the taxes that we pay into it. We are totally not represented, and we are the greatest number of citizens that the policy of the board affects. And number 4, the citizens of Fountainhead are paying twice for stormwater relief. First, we're paying taxes to the Fountainhead, and second, we're paying the recent stormwater utility fee. Obviously, this is not fair. Only paying the stormwater utility fee offers any hope of remediation. The extent of the flooding. As you know, water moves from its highest location to the lowest. The lowest place in the path of water from Springfield Avenue in Champaign through Northwest Champaign is the Copper Slough. This section of pipe owned by the Fountainhead is insufficient to allow the water to pass through in a timely manner. Because of this, water backs up to within a few blocks of the opposite end of the watershed. This would be near Springfield. This must be remediated. Now, the city of Champaign is willing to offer us help. And here I speak for many. We cannot lose this opportunity. I live in the 1200 block of University Avenue, an arterial street to downtown Champaign. It routinely floods during heavy rains. The flooding is at the lower end of my block, close to Dr. Howard's school. Many times over the last 15 years, I have seen water in the street as high as my mid-thigh. The standing water can extend 2/3 of the block to the west. When cars heading east on University Avenue realize they can't go through such a pool of water, they back up and turn around in my driveway. And then they head up a hill, going the wrong way on a one-way street. This is dangerous. Both Park Street and Church Street flood in the same way. A neighbor on Park Street lost her car one year, and many, many people have lost water heaters and other large appliances in their basement. There are very few houses with basements that have not been flooded, sometimes several times a year. Even last month, in a relatively dry month, stormwater washed debris into people's yards at this location. City engineers have stated that our floods are the worst in the city. Fixing this is phase 3 of the engineer's plan. Our residents have to have relief. And if not, Champaign will see significant deterioration of an older neighborhood that people now enjoy. Because we have seen so little benefit from the efforts of the Fountainhead, it seems to me we should seek detachment. I attended a couple or 3 Fountainhead meetings a couple of years ago. Very nice people. But on one occasion, I asked, where does our money go? I was told that chemicals for spraying cost a lot of money. Well, I'm happy the flow to the Kaskaskia is clear, but I think our contributions to the drainage district should...
Ma'am, your time's up, I'm sorry. It's 5 minutes. Thank you for your participation. Mr. Jim Creighton, please.
Good evening. My name is Jim Creighton. I live at 507 North Russell in Champaign. I'm the spokesman for the West Washington Watershed Steering Committee. And last week I had an opportunity to speak to the committee as a whole to try to persuade them to appoint John Houston instead of Mark Shaw. I was unsuccessful and thought I would try again. I am not a representative of the city. I do not speak for them. I speak for the thousands of people that live in the city limits of Champaign and the Fountainhead Drainage District. We make up 25% of the total land mass of the drainage district. Last week I quoted that the total number of 70% of the total tax levy comes from within the city limits. That was an incorrect figure. It's actually 75%. To remedy flooding issues in our watershed, the Fountainhead needs to do, at the very least, replace a large section of the drainage tile and line the remaining 2¼ miles of tile. That's the only outlet of water we have for our 2 square miles of area that drains. To do this, they would need a special assessment for every property owner within Subdistrict 7 with an equal share of cost to the repair. That can add up into hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for each homeowner. The city has been working on detachment for 20 years and is willing to take over the same stretch of pipe at no additional charge to the residents of Champaign. The city, we pay the Fountainhead a fee or taxes. Each year, we pay the city through property tax, sales tax, and a new stormwater utility fee for stormwater management as well. The city makes repairs and does its best to minimize the flooding. The Fountainhead Drainage District spends 50% of their budget on lawyers and redundant engineering studies, and they don't even have enough left to spray all the weeds. Detachment is our ultimate goal. It's been talked about for 20 years. The chairman last week announced that a deal was done. In my opinion, I believe the chairman didn't have all the necessary information to make that claim. There is no agreement. There is no deal. In fact, there has been no discussion on the matter since the city made an offer in May. The subject was not brought up at yesterday's Fountainhead Drainage District meeting because Charlie Breen, one of the commissioners, has been in Florida all summer. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't a Democratic issue. This isn't a Republican issue. This is a fundamental core belief of all parties and all citizens in our country that we have the right not to be double taxed, and we have to be provided with representation to a governing body. You have the power to represent us. Please reconsider the appointment and appoint John Houston to the Fountainhead. Thank you.
Alan Singleton, please.
Good evening, Alan Singleton. I reside at 2086 C County Road 125 East. My office is at 2001 South 1st Street, Champaign. I'm here on Resolution 8504, which is the Jones family request for rezoning to Ag 1 from CR. We've kind of been through this again, but I just want to highlight a couple of things that I provided to you via email. I provided you with a roadmap basically a finding of fact. It's summarized in terms of the LRMP goals, and there's sufficient evidence in the record to support each of those goals. I think one of the things that's sort of gotten lost is the fact that even though these people have jobs outside of their farming activities, they're clearly involved in agricultural pursuits. They grow hay on the runway. They have cattle. They have horses. They row crop farm. They like to keep their machinery, their airplanes that they use to inspect their crops and to engage in aerial pollination on their farmstead, on their homestead. As we think about some of the goals, we think about prosperity. Prosperity means embracing new and innovative agricultural practices. Agriculture is a backbone of rural Champaign County economy. And if we want to continue to grow and be prosperous, we should embrace that. Second, goal 4 is agriculture. We have a freedom, we have a resolution, a right to farm resolution. And I would say, respectfully suggest that approval of this rezoning from CR to Ag 1 would be very much in line with that. Policy 4.6.3 specifically provides that the county will implement agricultural purposes exemption subject to applicable statutory and constitutional limits so that all full and part-time farmers and retired farmers will be assured the ability to practice agriculture, even if some non-farmers are also benefited. In terms of health and public safety, time is of the essence when we have an emergency situation. And if the petitioner is able to shave 15 to 20 minutes off getting access to the helicopter to go out and look for a lost child, perhaps an autistic child who has wandered off into the cold, that can mean the difference between life and death for that child. So public safety is goal 6, and the rezoning would facilitate meeting that. Natural resources, the runway is planted in grasses, and that will conserve the soil and prevent it from eroding into the nearby Ambraw River. Goal 9, energy conservation. Part of the side transition is planted switchgrass, which is an alternative biofuel. I realize it's been a controversial topic, and a lot of time and effort's been spent on it. I'd like to thank everybody for their attention to it. And should you decide to vote in favor of the rezoning, the packet I provided would provide you with more than sufficient foundation to make that decision. Thank you.
Terry Townsend?
I use all my time up trying to get here to the podium. Terry Townsend, I am a retired vice chairman of the Housing Authority of Champaign County. I do understand I served for 10 years, and on July 25th, 2013, for the second time, I made the Housing Authority and the County Board aware that a commissioner who was not elected or granted or was appointed to the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners was in fact serving in that capacity. After the county board chair and other authorities conducted an extensive investigation, they found that my discovery was on point. But questions still remain. Clearly, the Secretary of the Board of Commissioners, which is in fact the director, did not inform the county board that a vacancy was there. And what I don't understand is why not. The chairperson who was not appointed has served, I think, and done a pretty good job, has signed 201 documents and we don't know what those legal ramifications for the Housing Authority and the Champaign County Board are. This is a serious matter. Clearly, the County Board must revisit its responsibilities related to the Housing Authority. Another example should prove instructive. Mismanagement and conflict of interest issues between the Regional Planning Commission and the Housing Authority of Champaign County are a problem. Reportedly, HUD took back $42,000 from the Housing Authority of Champaign County because of problems the RPC had with administering that grant. Yet, the Housing Authority Director continues to sit on the Regional Planning Commission, which in effect undercuts the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners' oversight. Taxpayers deserve better oversight of this municipal corporation, which has eminent domain powers and subpoena powers. Therefore, I'm recommending the following: that all units of government meet to clarify responsibilities under the law and the convoluted intergovernmental agreement. And I'm requesting as soon as possible a formal investigation by the federal government and other legal authorities. And I encourage the county board to look into these issues, because I don't think at this point anybody understands how this could happen. The train ran off the track, clearly. Nobody knew what was going on here. The Board of Commissioners have refused to take any action. You're going to have to step up, determine what is appropriate to do, meet with the other bodies of government, and figure out where we should go from here. Thank you.
Dan McCullum, please.
Dan McCollum, 807 West Church, Champaign. I'm here to request that the appointment of Mr. Shaw be postponed to the Fountainhead Drainage District. There is, in fact, substantial, and I mean substantial, unresolved issues between the Drainage District and the city. Not the least of these is the dual taxation of residents of Subdistrict 7 for stormwater services. At present, Subdistrict 7 has the overwhelming number of residents within the larger district, provides over 70% of its revenues, and yet there has not been a resident of Subdistrict 7 on the Fountainhead Board in my memory, and it goes back a while. I guess this is taxation without representation. Wars have been fought by over less than that. I have had a lengthy association with stormwater drainage issues. Note the boneyard improvements, which took a number of years to resolve, and gobs of money, especially lawyers' fees. And I've noticed that the Drainage District has a very substantial portion of its budget this year, or what its expenditures this year, with legal fees of almost $38,000, mostly associated with these negotiations, which are not really going anywhere right now. So before the proposed appointment is made, I think there should be an opportunity for a timely resolution, and the county board can offer this by deferring this appointment and allow a time for the issues to be resolved in behalf of the residents. Thank you.
Mark Fisher? Mr. Fisher? I'm sorry, pass? Okay, thank you. Gene Fisher? We can't see you.
I know, I'm going to slide it down there. There we go. There you go. My name's Jean Fisher, and I reside at 195 County Road, 1600 East in Villa Grove. And I am here to discuss the Resolution 8504. I believe I had sent a communique out to the board members. I hope everybody received theirs concerning that. Basically, that was a letter that was sent to ELUC. And what I wanted to address today is that the accuracy of the facts, a summary of evidence and finding of facts, as Mr. Singleton has presented in the information, the memo that you folks have received. I got a chance to review some of that information, and I think it actually looks like there's a twist to the finding of facts of that evidence. It's obviously it's slanted toward his way, the petitioner's way, and it doesn't appear that it really takes into the ZBA's finding of facts. You know, any way you package it up, put a big red bow on it, you can twist it around, but it's not accurate. And after reviewing that, I actually believe that what the petitioner is trying to do at this point is to introduce new information that wasn't per se introduced to in the ZBA meetings. He's basically using the Gertis case as a model for this RLA request. One major difference is that the Gertis case was a case that did not need a map amendment. This one does. It's in a conservation district. Everything that the petitioner is doing on his property is an allowable use already in that. He is suffering no harm. He can grow row crops. It was actually stated during the ZBA meetings, he stated it himself, that he could make more money by putting that property back into 15 acres of row crops than what the way is existing right now. So I find it very hard to believe that there's been any financial hardship involved with this. And let me show you this picture here. If you can see this square right here, this is the section that we're talking about. This little area here is the area that the petitioner wants to be rezoned. This whole thing is conservation. You can see there's trees running through here. And that's where the Embera River runs. Okay, this is a section that is zoned agriculture. This is zoned agriculture. This over here, this block over here is agriculture. But this is for the protection and preservation of the conservation district. Now, another interesting thing that we also are dealing with is this little red block over here. This is already an existing RLA. From here to this area here, this is less than a mile. We would be the only people within a mile's distance to have 2 RLAs within the area that we would have to deal with. I would also like to point out that the petitioner also stated that aircraft is his hobby. He stated that he wanted to fly planes. It was his hobby, and I believe he should have a hobby. But the Conservation District is very important to preserve. It was found by the ZBA that it would be a very significant impact to the Conservation District, and it would change the course of what would happen should it be rezoned Ag 1. It opens it up to other uses that may degrade the area and cause it to fail. He also mentioned one of the items with all of his planes and his airplanes is a recent purchase of a B-51, similar to a B-51 bomber. It's called a T-6 Texan. I have a picture of that. Okay? This is not an aircraft that is used for agricultural purposes. This is for a hobby, for fun. He says that. And I actually have a newspaper article, if I can hand some out. I ran out of printer ink, but I have this
Pam,
here.
it's 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
participation. Julia Hall. Pass? Okay, thank you. Larry Hall.
Evening. Larry Hall. I reside at 177 County Road, 1600E, Villa Grove, in Champaign County, next to the property in question, the rezoning of Resolution 8504. Not going to let my wife off the hook totally. I asked her to help me out with this. I would like, some of you have seen this in the ELUC. Others of you have not and may not have had an opportunity to drive by the property. I'm going to ask her to slowly walk around. You will see our house in proximity, in direct proximity to the already prepared mowed landing strip. So we want you to really envision how close it is. Speaking for myself, my wife, and with the signed support of a substantial majority of the neighbors, we continue to emphatically state our opposition to the proposed zoning changes and to the introduction of an RLA into our neighborhood. We pretty much said all we know to say and provided the evidence to support our concerns and opposition over the last 2.5 years. All this has been heard and scrutinized by the ZBA. They voted on it, approved it. We got a unanimous ELUC. So I thought, what the heck am I going to say? What can I talk about? What can I address? The only thing I've seen since that time period was what I will call not a roadmap, but a fantasy finding of fact that you all received, which is not relevant to what the ZBA or ELUC approved or endorsed or put before you tonight for your endorsement or approval, I should say. But it is instead similar to if you took a test in school and flunked and come back and said, well, I think the answers ought to agree with what I said, with what I wanted the answers to be. Their interpretation of what it should have been. They now reference, as some examples, aerial inspection, this was mentioned earlier, and pollination of what? There's no corn out there. The only substantive cropland that would be after this would be a small pasture, which is located behind our houses to the immediate north of the proposed RLA. And you can inspect that by standing on the 8-foot wall of dirt that they erected behind our houses. You see, in front of the ZBA, Mr. Jones stated there would not be enough land remaining around the landing strip area to be worth harvesting. That was due in part to the evidence that we provided that showed a safety requirement of the grass being mowed at less than 3 inches, which obviously cannot be harvested. It must be maintained at that level if you're going to use it for a landing strip, an approved landing strip. So he'll not be using it for agriculture. In fact, he can use it now for agriculture, so we'd be taking it out of agriculture, as well as obviously taking it out of the conservation district. They now cite being able to store fuel and refuel aircraft, but never mention fuel spillage containment practices. Yeah, I agree with many. The EPA tend to get a little carried away. And as a matter of fact, I personally have worked for the NFIB. You may or may not know, familiar with that, but for 27 years. And one of the things we do is we've been trying to minimize the cost effects on farmers from overregulation. But our well is behind our house, and we're very concerned about it in this case. Under landscape character, they state that they would not have to remove any old growth trees. So what about new growth trees and foliage that would be removed from the CR? In front of the ZBA again, Dr. Jones stated that this process was a joke, a paper game that could be rubber stamped. And again, quoting, "I only want to fly my planes from his house." We don't think it's a joke. I suspect you guys don't either. It's taking a lot of your time. And he can fly his planes, just not take off and land them next to our home. Thank you.
James Kilgore.
Good evening. James Kilgore, 511 South Draper Avenue, Champaign. I'm going to be uncharacteristically very brief tonight. I want to make 3 points as you go into your marathon deliberations on the budget. The first point would be 30%. Please remember the recommendation of the Community Justice Task Force to allocate 30% of the public safety sales tax to preventive programs. Number 2, I wanted to remind you of an interchange between Mr. Quisenberry and the director of Bellwether last week when he asked him where utilities fell in his accounting system. And he said they fell under operating costs. They're not maintenance. They don't belong under public safety sales tax. Please do something about that. Thirdly, to update a theme that I've emphasized here before, the state of North Carolina has just voted to close 5 prisons. It's happening across the country. Decarceration, reduction in people inside jails and prisons, move to programs of prevention. Please do the same in Champaign County by voting with your budgetary decisions. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in public participation? All right, if not, I'm closing public participation right now. Thank you. Let's move on to communications. Anybody on the board have any communications? I have a couple of things to mention. First, please make sure that when you speak, you turn on your microphone. I've been observing some of the video, and you can't be heard if that microphone is not turned on. So if your neighbor sees you, please make sure that's turned on, but also make sure it's turned off, because then you're interfering with other statements on the microphone. Thank you. Second, please, let's be respectful of each board member when they speak, to give them your attention so that everyone can hear their statements and give them the respect of the time that they are recognized. And third, for the record, I have a letter that I received this morning from Mr. James Cottrell. He is the attorney for the Fountainhead Drainage District. I'll read it into the record. Dear Mr. Kurtz, we had a good meeting yesterday. It was very positive and friendly, and I wanted to personally thank you for your efforts in getting the city back on track and back to the table so that we might get the detachment agreement done. It couldn't have been done without your efforts. The district is making certain revisions to a proposal for the city to examine, and we are planning on setting up face-to-face meetings in early September with several of the city council members and city staff to see if we can make more progress. Mr. Shaw's knowledge and experience was necessary at yesterday's meeting. His continued involvement with further efforts on this matter will be critical. He has many years of experience with district matters, and his involvement is important to protect the district's interests. Thank you again, James T. Cottrell. We'll put that into the record. Are there any other communications? All right, let's move on. I'd like a motion approval of the minutes for July 18th, 2013 regular meeting. Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Carter. Any changes, revisions to the minutes? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, let's move on. At this point, Ms. Petrie, will you be the representative for the Local Foods Policy Council report? Because it's your turn now.
Okay, thank you very much. The Local Food Policy Council wanted to come before the county board to give a report on what they have been focusing on and accomplishing this this past year since our previous county board passed the resolution establishing the council. Todd Satterswade is chair of the council, and I know all the members are here. I'd like Todd to briefly introduce the members, and then for Todd to also introduce the people who will be giving the report. And you have a copy of the PowerPoint slides that will be used, and Ms. Busey very kindly has loaded up the PowerPoint presentation for the presenters.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Petrie. Thanks to the county board for letting us do a brief presentation today. As Ms. Petrie said, I'm the chair of the Local Foods Policy Council, and we've been, we were a body approved by this board a little over a year ago, so we've been meeting for about a year and 2 months. We have most of the, do we have everybody or most everybody here? Brad Yukin is in the back here. We've got Mel Farrell, Zach Kennedy, Maya Bauer, Kathy Capel, Chris Henning, and Rebecca Roach over here. Are we missing anybody? Oh, yeah, Steve Harriet from Sydney area is not here, but everybody else is here. And leading the presentation is Zach Kennedy, and I think he's going to be assisted by Brad Yukin and Chris Henning. So I'll turn it over to Zach. He's with the U of I Extension.
And while they're coming up to set up their presentation, Chris Hennings is very involved at the University Food Service, and they just met the challenge of I don't know how many gallons of salsa today. He sent out a message, and I'm sorry I neglected to get the gallons in my memory bank, Chris, but you can tell everybody.
Good evening. Again, on behalf of the Local Foods Policy Council, we'd like to thank you for the county board, both for creating the council and for allowing us the opportunity to speak to you this evening. So the Local Food Policy Council, again, was established in May of 2012 with the following stated purposes: to enhance economic development and strengthen local food systems, to bring stakeholders together and provide mechanisms for seeking stakeholder expertise, to explore means for small business loans, to coordinate and collaborate with existing programs, to bring to the attention of the County Board new programs, to identify and recommend to the County Board initiatives to support goals of the Local Food Policy Council, and finally to establish a website on the Champaign County website. And these purposes align with the Champaign County Economic Development Policy, ED4, which, to paraphrase, seeks to preserve and strengthen agriculture and agritourism in our county. So as a bit of a progress report, in an effort, as the charter said, to coordinate and collaborate with the existing programs, we've brought in a number of speakers. We talked to Lisa Braultz, the former director of Urbana Farmers Market. She talked to us about the enforcement of the public health code as it relates to the farmers market. We also heard from Leslie Cooperman of Prairie Foods Farm and Creamery, who gave a vendor's perspective on the requirements for farmers market vending. I should also mention that Prairie Fruit Farms recently won the Illinois Agriculture Agritourism Leaders of the Year Award, awarded by State Comptroller Judy Bartopenka. So there's some good agritourism and agribusiness things happening right here in our county. We heard from the Illinois Green Business Association, who spoke about their business certification program, which recognizes businesses that utilize sustainable practices. They do have a criteria that does include use of local foods as one of their criteria for certification. We heard from 0%, who's a nonprofit whose goal is to eliminate restaurant food waste by making sure that food that would otherwise be thrown away is safely donated to local nonprofits which feed people in need. We heard from the Champaign County Health Department. They discussed the permitting process for farmers market vendors, and through a conversation with the Health Department, plans to make improvements to their website which will streamline the permitting process has been something that's been discussed and will hopefully happen. We heard from the Learman Neighborhood Community Garden. They spoke to us about the process of getting a community garden established. We heard from Rick Weinzerl, who is in charge of a program called Growing a New Generation of Illinois Fruit and Vegetable Farmers. This is a year-long program of classroom and hands-on in the field instruction that teaches essential skills and information so that new growers have the knowledge to be successful fruit and vegetable farmers. This program is available in 3 locations in Illinois: Dixon Springs, right here in Urbana, and in St. Charles. We heard from Todd Rusk of DCO and Illinois Biz, who discussed some of the barriers for new or potential specialty crop growers. He also kind of summarized and shared with us some of the finer points of the Food, Farms, and Jobs Act. We heard from folks from the Land Connection and Edible Economy. The Land Connection is an educational program for new and beginning farmers, and Edible Economy is a project seeking to establish a food hub or a food aggregation center in the Bloomington area. Moving along, in an effort to meet the charter goal to identify and recommend to the county board initiatives to support the goals of the Local Food Policy Council, we put together a couple of proposals that address the Rural Residential Overlay Ordinance, specifically the Land Evaluation and Site Assessment or LISA score criteria. We first proposed a change to existing LISA factors that would account for the fact that even small parcels of prime farmland may be suitable for specialty crop production and thus should be protected. We presented our proposal to the ZBA, and they seemed to be favorable to it, and then we proceeded to ELUC. We did not have success with ELUC, so we went back to the drawing table, and we came up with a second proposal where we proposed, instead of amending existing LISA criteria, we proposed a 13th factor to LISA and presented it to ELUC for their consideration. The proposal read that a 13th criteria should be that the effects of proposed development on the current and potential local food production capability of the subject site and surrounding area. Ultimately, we were not successful in getting ELUC to approve either of our proposals, but the experience began in a very important conversation. Moving on, the Local Food Policy Council charter talks about creating a web presence, and we were able to secure a grant from Common Ground Food Co-op to work with a local web developer to create a website with information that would be useful both to local food producers, distributors, and also consumers and end users. We have drafted a guest commentary for the News Gazette that introduces our communities to the Local Food Policy Council. We hope that this column will run in early October. And then finally, we did a site visit to Tiny Greens facility to kind of examine the potential for creating an aggregation center or a local food hub. So one of the stated purposes of the Local Food Policy Council is to bring to the attention of the board new programs and initiatives. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over briefly to Brad Euchen and Chris Henning, who will discuss two of these such projects.
Hello, my name is Chris Henning, and I'm on the Local Foods Policy Council, but I bring a unique perspective to it in that I represent institutional food buying. I am the Senior Assistant Director of Dining Services for the University of Illinois. Hi, Steve. For a lot of you, I know you don't have like the full scope of what the university does as far as dining. We're a large institution. We feed over 9,000 board plan holders a day. We serve over 30,000 meals a day. Our food budget last year was $14.6 million. This year it will be $15.4 million. We're anticipating a 3% increase in food commodities and food costs. So we have a rather large and interesting problem in that purchasing local foods in large volumes is difficult, especially in Champaign County. So we have a couple of initiatives on campus right now. I'm going to talk a little bit about our partnership with the Student Farm, but I'd also like to talk about how that relates to food hubs and agriculture in general. We've been partnering with the Student Farm for about 6 years now. The partnership started relatively small, and they agreed to grow a couple crops for us in that first year. They have approximately 6 acres of outdoor land that is used for agriculture, and then they have 10,000 square feet of high tunnel space that's used for growing crops year-round. In collaboration with the farm, they'll grow us anything that we want, but we use more than they can possibly offer. As part of this council, we've mentioned the edible economy and the food hub, and through collaboration with the edible economy, I had the privilege to go down to the Arthur food auction here in Illinois and see kind of a working aggregation of crops. And I kind of had a light bulb moment during that tour and realized that the only way to really bring local foods into an institution like ours would be through some kind of aggregational system, such as the Arthur auction. We currently have a prime vendor for produce through Central Illinois Produce this year. It's the first time the university has had a prime vendor for produce. And through that partnership, we're actually able to buy through the Arthur food auction now. A prime example of that is tomorrow's project that we're working on campus. Every year as part of convocation, we produce something that goes into the Guinness Book of World Records. First year was the world's largest smoothie. Last year was the largest group of people shucking corn at one time. This year will be the largest bowl of salsa at 7,500 pounds. All of this product is going to be from local sources. As much of the product that we can take from the farm was able to grow us approximately 1,200 pounds of tomatoes. They were able to supply us with all of the onions and all of the peppers for this recipe. The rest of the items, the cilantro and the remaining tomatoes that we need, have been purchased through the Arthur auction. So for us, this was kind of a test to really develop a working model of how this could work for other institutions and other universities. As it stands right now, we are looked at as a university that has a good working model for a student farm, and we're often visited by other universities to see how that operates and how that fits into our dining program. So from my aspect, buying local really is a balance of cost while getting a quality ingredient and supporting local economies. We talk a lot about stewardship of funds at the University of Illinois, and it's important that we're good stewards of the monies that our students pay in the dining program. That said, that leads us into kind of the next topic, which is 0%. Again, I had the pleasure of meeting Rajesh, who heads up the 0% program here in Champaign through the Local Foods Policy Council. We have now decided to partner with Rajesh. With food production with the University of Illinois, we really try to eliminate as much waste as possible, but by the sheer numbers that we serve, there's always going to be some form of overproduction. We've always worked with Salvation Army, Stepping Stone, a number of local charities to take our donations and use them in the community. The problem is sometimes they're inundated with donations and they can't take our product. And sometimes our schedules of production don't work into that. So 0% for us was a natural resource. We have started a pilot program at Iconberry Dining Services, which is our largest food operation, and there it's been going extremely well. Our management staff is extremely pleased having a web resource that they can go to basically advertise what we have available. And then it's the responsibility of the donating, the organization that's picking up the donation, to contact us by cell phone or by text. And we've had tremendous success with that, and we're planning on branching out and introducing this to all 6 of our dining units. And we have a meeting on August 29th to actually introduce that and expand it to everywhere else on campus. So those are the two main projects I wanted to talk about, but University of Illinois, we employ a lot of chefs. We're very passionate about what we do, and we're extremely passionate about local foods.
Good evening. One of the other challenges that's out there when we talk about local foods is individuals that may want to get started in it may not have access to land. Land is a challenge. It's expensive. Financing always isn't easy if you're getting into the industry, and so resources for that may be a little thin. So one of the ideas that I came up with and started to visit with the village of Rantoul was, those of you who are familiar with Rantoul knows that they have some land that was left to them them by the former Chanute Air Force Base. This land is all inside the city limits of the village of Rantoul at this point. So I visited with the village of Rantoul to talk to them about the opportunity to match individuals who wanted to start farming that maybe couldn't afford it or didn't have access to land with some of the parcels that they have. The village was very, very interested in this for a number of factors, not only to increase local food production, but economic development was also one of their goals, as well as just simply to changing habits for all of us in our eating patterns. From the project, there's a steering committee that's been meeting that I'm part of, and as well as the university, Parkland College, the Illinois Farm Bureau, et cetera, have been talking about this, and we've really kind of zeroed in on three aspects. One of it would be a research and education, where we would take individuals who wake up tomorrow morning and want to get into local foods but have never done it before. They need a little bit of education of how to do it, of how to get started in it, the business side of things. How do you grow a tomato plant? It's more than just putting a little seed or a plug in the ground. So there would be an aspect of some training. From the research standpoint, we would hope and potentially work with different companies that would look at different techniques for growing local foods. The second aspect would be then for those individuals who have maybe done some training after a year or so, or want to expand their operations that are currently in local food production that just are maybe landlocked of where they're at and can't buy a small parcel that they need. The village is considering the option of forming a cooperative for those individuals to rent that land for some sort of fee and to grow that product. The third aspect of the project is if you're going to get individuals started in it, you should also consider a market for them and help with the market. As Chris talked about, aggregation is a big point. And so one of the village's goals is not only to create a farmer's market for some of the product to go to, but also to talk about aggregation, packing, cleaning, grading, and then getting into various markets. That could be here in Champaign-Urbana at the local restaurants. It could be the University of Illinois. It could be the county nursing home, but it also could be one of the other opportunities that we're obviously close to, Chicago, Indianapolis, or St. Louis. So it's an approach that has three aspects to it. We're exploring those and working with the community to get this moving, and I think that we'll see some progress made on that here in the coming months, most likely and hopefully on all three aspects simultaneously and moving forward with this. So it's another great project, again, that is just more than just growing local foods. It has far-reaching benefits to the county and to the region as a whole.
Last year, the council engaged in a strategic planning process that identified the inputs, outputs, and outcomes that we were aiming for in our work. Subsequently, we identified a few actions that bring the council closer to meeting the goals identified in that process, as well as those in the council charter. So some of the short-term actions, just as a couple samples. We hope to convene an advisory group to tap into the rich expertise on local foods and to provide additional perspectives and guidance as the council moves forward. We'd like to work with the Chambers of Commerce, Champaign County Visitors Bureau, and the EDC to market the local foods that we do have. We'd like to work with the Illinois Green Business Association to create a separate certification to recognize restaurants that use a lot of local foods. And in the long term, we would like to compile a comprehensive list featuring local foods and local food producers. We'd like to encourage local institutions to adopt a policy to increase their percentage of locally sourced foods. And also, we'd like to conduct a needs assessment of local producers. What are some of the barriers and issues that they're facing? So I would like to conclude by pointing out the handout that you should have seen on your desk that looks kind of like this. The kind of two takeaways, and Brad kind of touched on these earlier. First, eating locally has health implications and nutrition implications. Simply put, locally grown foods have a greater nutritional value than foods that are trucked over great distances. And second, supporting the local food system has a great economic impact. Encouraging a strong and diverse local food offerings is economic development. So again, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I don't know if this is the proper venue to accept field questions, but the council is always open to your questions, and we look forward to hearing and working with you on this topic.
Mr. Alex.
I just had a quick comment or question for Mr. Henning. I know that University Housing also operates the Orchard Downs complex on campus, and I was wondering if you could say something about the Orchard Downs community farm there, because I understand that's probably not, the food being produced there is not for commercial consumption, but I've seen, you know, many of your residents selling, trading, you know, providing that food to other people in that complex. And I think as somebody who lives in that neighborhood, it's definitely something that we're aware of as a sort of hands-on local food project that is also sort of supported by the university.
Unfortunately, I can't really say much about the Orchard Downs project. I've kind of, up until now, I've been entrenched in dining services, and I'm new to the position of senior assistant director, in fact. I drive by that same plot of land every day, though, and know that it does exist and it's out there for the community to use. I will say that one of the other lesser-known facts about the student farm is that it actually also sells produce to the community and to the public as well, and that Zach is often found on over by the Illini Union on Thursdays, I believe it is, and sells out of a produce cart. So my apologies for not having more information on that, but that's a very good point.
Quiz.
Yeah, I'm not sure who I'm directing this question to, but the last couple of years I've had been fortunate enough to be in Madison, Wisconsin, when their local food group, which is a nonprofit organization, has held events to feature local restaurants using local foods and other local products. I'm curious if you see in the near future or even the long-term future creating events that build public awareness to the opportunities and how good local food can be.
You know, that's a really good question, and we've struggled in several of our meetings in deciding whether we want to be a council that is more focused on policy and encouraging, local institutions to have a goal of having 20% of their food sourced locally, which is consistent with the State Food Farms and Jobs Act, or if we want to, and other policy questions, or if we want to be a council that does things like events and promotions of restaurants that serve local food and so forth. And so we really haven't answered that question ourselves. We're doing a little bit of both, but we also don't want to tread on the territory of other groups that are doing those kinds of things. There are local restaurants that do have dinners that focus on local foods. A lot of those are sponsored by, or some of those are sponsored by the Illinois Stewardship Alliance. I think they're monthly through at least October and November. So a lot of that's going on, and one of the things that we wanted to do with our website is not to create new material per se, but just to create a lot of links to existing organizations, the Edible Economy, Illinois Stewardship Alliance, the local restaurants that are promoting local food, so you can have a one-stop shop on the web where you can connect to a lot of the other things. Does that answer your question, James?
Any other questions from the board?
I have to add to that. One of the things, because I also...
Ma'am, just take a seat in front of the microphone, please.
I just wanted to add a couple of things. One of the things that we have
Your name?
discovered as the local foods council, policy council, is
What is
that...
your name?
My name is Becky Roach. I sit
Thank
on the
you.
council. Yes,
Just
I'm
for the
sorry.
record.
There are lots of regulations that I know Madison has worked through and come to acceptable processes and things like that. But when we talk to our county health department, it would be very, very difficult for us to do things like that at our local farmers market. So that's one of the things that we want to continue to work with the public health department, so that perhaps something like that would be possible in the future. But this is one of the things that we wanted to look at in the future too, because those are great opportunities.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Fine. First, I want to thank Patsy Petrie. It was really a gem of her idea that put this local food policy council together, and I want to congratulate her on the efforts that have taken place. And each and every one of you, I want to thank you. Local Foods has been growing in areas all across the country, and I think it's an excellent way to help economic development as well as to bring fresh fruits to our markets. So I want to thank each and every one of you for the effort and time that you've put in here, and obviously there are great results taking place, and hopefully in the future there'll be more. So thank you very, very much, and we appreciate all of your efforts. Thank you. All right, let's move on. Mr. Scott Gima from the nursing home, for the nursing home report, please. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Gima with Management Performance Associates of St. Louis, Missouri. And this is the third quarter nursing home report for you. On the topics, one correction, strategic initiatives should be replaced by Medicaid update. So for our census, and the census is as of July of 2013. Our census has started to show signs of a northbound trend, slightly. So in the month of June, we were at 184. July, we've dropped down to 182. And as of 8/20 in the chart, and as of today, our census is 187, with a couple of our residents currently in the hospital. Our Medicare census has shown a much stronger uptick over the last 3 or 4 months. And we are currently through July at an average of 18.2. Our actual Medicare census today, unfortunately, is at either 10 or 11. But with our census at 187, what we've been seeing, we've gone down to 10, but that drop has resulted not in discharges home for once, but most of those Medicare have converted to long-term residents. So in this chart where you see admissions, very positive trend that we've seen in the month of July, June and July. Record-breaking months, 39 admissions in June and 37 admissions in July. We have never had months since the move into the new facility with that many admissions on a monthly basis. So on an average basis in 2012, we averaged 22.2 admissions per month. So far in 2013, we are averaging 27.9 admissions per month.
Scott, hold on.
Yeah,
James?
Scott, can you attribute those two banner months to anything in particular? Where are these admissions coming from?
The majority of the admissions are Medicare admissions, and so they're referrals from the hospitals. And so I believe it is a very strong indication of the stronger relationship that we have been working on building with both hospital systems. Discharges. So again, we've talked about this the last quarter. We have seen an uptick in the discharges, and again in June and July, all-time highs of discharges of 27 in each month. And again, these are Medicare residents who have returned home. So from a quality of care standpoint, it's a very positive trend. From a census standpoint, unfortunately, I can't have it both ways. It's not keeping our census up. But again, another example of not having it both ways, my Medicare census is down, but we've converted most of those people into long-term residents, keeping our overall census up. So again, the main point is we're starting to see a positive change in our census going back up. Basically, if we get a month where our discharges are much lower than our admissions, then we'll see a nice change further up Yes, Rachel? I'm
Can you
sorry.
just explain, it's not normal that Medicare converts to Medicaid, to long-term? What happened?
We have much more control over the admissions, but in terms of who goes home, who becomes long-term residents, because we really don't differentiate the type of residents that we're bringing in, it really is going to be not a gamble, but we're just not going to have control over whether someone is actually going to go home or whether they're going to become a long-term resident.
Right, but Medicare usually would be people who've been in the hospital, right?
Yes.
And need a rehab.
Right.
So are you getting more referrals of people who would, older and therefore normally would not go home, but to stay in a facility, or was
Again,
just a
it will just
fluke?
vary. So if we happen in 1 month to have a lot of orthopedics, in most cases, those will return home. So again, it just varies from the type of referrals that we're getting from the hospitals. Financial position. So again, this chart shows cash generated or cash flow from operations, which is the net of revenues less expenses, without including the depreciation expense. So what you can see is, obviously, with the downturn in the census, we have shown a poor financial track record in 2013. Now, on a year-to-date basis, we are actually about break even on cash flow being generated from operations. But you can see in the month of May, we showed a net cash loss from operations of about $126,000. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about that, if I could. So with the census at that time at about 180 or a little bit below that, we estimated that we should see a net cash loss of about $60,000. And again, in the month of May, we showed about $126,000. So what was the reason for that? Well, I call it the perfect storm. So we had, obviously, an additional $62,000 in expenses. Now, those additional expenses were not, I would call, unanticipated expenses, but what they were was expenses that were not accrued on a monthly basis, but were expensed totally in the month of May. So, for example, interest expense, which, using round numbers, let's say it totals about $120,000 a year. We actually accrue our interest expense on the bonds. And so we would be expensing about $10,000 a month. In the month of May, we had a big expense of $40,000 for a semi-annual union attendance bonus that is in the collective bargaining agreement. So we pay out staff who do not get written up for attendance issues. And basically, twice a year, we're paying out roughly $40,000 in additional wages plus related benefit costs. So on an annual basis, the attendance bonus is costing us about $85,000 to $90,000, depending on how many people receive the bonus. We have not been accruing that expense on a monthly basis, so we incurred the entire semi-annual expense in the month of May. The rest of the $62,000 increase, or roughly $22,000, was because of the Memorial Day holiday, associated overtime pay. We also had a workers' comp catch-up payment of $17,000 that was missed back in May. And when you put that all together, it roughly added up to the additional $62,000 in expense. So we definitely showed a bad month, but the additional expenses could be explained, and it wasn't that we were spending $60,000 in extra stuff in the month. Any questions on that before I move on?
Clarification, remind me, in December 2012, was the influx of such a high number due to a lump sum payment from the state? I'm just trying to remember why there was such a massive increase at that time, because everything else seems to be trending downward over the past 6 to 8 months, except for that.
In the month of December, we had an all-time high in census, which was over 210. So Obviously, I would love to maintain a census of 210 so we can repeat that month. In the next slide, again, is the contract nursing monthly expenses. So again, I have good news to report that we keep getting record-breaking months. So in the months of March, April, May, all the way into June, we are down to under $20,000 in agency expenses per month. I think roughly we were at about 17 or 18,000.
Scott, that's quite exceptional, particularly where we were not very long ago in '09. I have to say congratulations on that area. Not all areas, just that area so far.
Thanks, Al. All right, in terms of the balance sheet, in terms of cash, accounts receivable, accounts payable. So for the most part, we've been averaging a cash balance of about $1 million. And obviously, there's fluctuations depending on what cash outlays we're having in any given month. Now, you can see in June, we were down to about $630,000 for the month. So again, I want to take a little time to explain what was going on in the month of June. We paid down on our payables about $140,000. So, and the biggest chunk was to our physical therapy provider, and that was about $75,000. And again, the reason for doing that was so that we would stop incurring any late penalty interest charges on our accounts payable. So, where are we with our accounts payable? We are basically caught up with all of our accounts payables to date. So we've come a long way from where we were back in December of 2011, where you can see our payables were significantly higher than where they are now. So again, that was about $140,000 pay down, $75,000 for therapy. There was also an extra bed tax payment to the state of $35,000. We got caught up with our FICA and IMRF payments back to the county. That was $50,000. There was a bond interest payment of $65,000. And we spent $30,000 or expensed $30,000 on the boiler installation for the laundry and the kitchen. We also had an increase in accounts receivable of about $170,000, which includes, the most of it is for $86,000 that we accrue on the property, I'm drawing a blank, on the, we borrow on the property taxes at the beginning of the fiscal year. Thank you very much. And so that's the accrual that we have on that payment back to the county that we incur every month. We had an increase in private pay accounts receivable, about $40,000, and Medicare was up by $50,000. And again, most of the time, that is due to the timing of the cash receipts. And again, those payments were actually received or booked in the month of July. But because those payments were not booked in the month of June, our accounts receivable increased by a total of $90,000 between private pay and Medicare. But I anticipate as we go through the rest of the year, we'll get back up towards the million, and hopefully, depending, of course, on what the census is, hopefully see a little bit increase in our cash by the end of the year. And again, I think in the next quarter's report, I'll give you an update on the cash flow projections. So the last topic, Medicaid updates. Again, everything is status quo, so that's good. We are receiving regular monthly payments from the state. We are actually down to either 1 or 2 months in arrears. So basically, we've been almost caught up. And again, the state earlier in the summer, late spring, had an infusion of additional revenue, so they were getting caught up with some of their payments. Will that continue? I keep hearing that it won't. How bad will it get? No one is going to say, but right now, we are getting paid within 30 to 60 days. So again, to summarize where we are, Medicare census has shown substantial stronger growth in June and July. Overall census is finally starting to see a turnaround in the positive direction. Unfortunately, we can't control the percentage of our admissions that end up going home or becoming long-term residents. But having a very high number of admissions shows that we are making strong, positive changes in our relationship with both hospitals and with Health Alliance Managed Care Plan. And we are doing the same thing in preparation for the dual eligible managed care program that should be starting sometime next year. Any questions?
Just a quick follow-up. The Medicare that converted to long-term, are these private pay or Medicaid? If you happen to know.
I don't know what the percentage is, but it will be a combination of the two. Now, one side comment that I didn't put in the slides, and I don't, no reason why I didn't, I probably should have put it in there. We have actually also seen an increase in our private pay admissions this year.
Jeff?
Thank you, Scott. One of the things that concerns me, and it's not in this report, it's something I know we've talked about in great depth before, and I'm very confident that the Nursing Home Board has discussed outside of the purview of the full board. We've been receiving some bad press lately, and it's something that we need to keep an eye on, and great, the financials are one aspect of this, but if quality of care continues to be in the newspaper, it's something that we need to keep an eye on, at least to get a report or an update thereof from you on a quarterly basis. Just let us know what is happening. Besides what our representatives provide us today, it would be great to hear from you in the future as well, hear it from your side of the story too. We don't have to go into uber detail now, but I would love to see that in the future. Tell us what we're doing to improve the overall quality of care for our residents and making sure that's at the forefront along with our financial position.
Jim?
I'd like to know what kind of steps we're taking to improve those, the quality of care, because obviously it's going to affect the census and the budget for the nursing home.
What I can tell you, because again, without going into a lot of detail, I'm spending a lot of time on it, is that we are spending a lot of time and effort on quality of care measures. We always have, but with the changes going on with managed care, both Health Alliance and Molina Healthcare will require us to prove that we are providing high quality of care. So, you know, we are currently in the process of going through our strategic objectives with the Nursing Home Board of Directors, and a lot of this stuff is what we're talking about. So, I would definitely add quality of care summary to the next quarterly report. And the hardest part of that is to try to summarize what we're doing in a few minutes that I have in front of you. But what I can tell you again is that we are very focused on quality of care that's going on in the facility.
Quick follow-up to that, if you're having any difficulties trying to figure out what metrics can be easily put on a couple slides, it'd be good to identify the SLAs or some other service level agreements or key performance indicators, get those approved by the Nursing Home Board. I think having that brought by the Nursing Home Board to this county board so that you know exactly what we're looking for on a quarterly basis may be advantageous to you, because ultimately, you could literally throw 1,000 slides up of the different quality measures that you think are important, but are going to be, you're inundating us. So perhaps working directly with the Nursing Home Board to figure out what KPIs need to be addressed and brought to this board. And I'd be excited to see it next time.
And again, we are currently working on that process right now with the strategic objective
Gary
process that we're working on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our Nursing Home Board of Directors Chairman, Emmanuel, as part of our last meeting and the strategic planning process that we're involved in over there, directed Scott to come back. We're working on the metrics, quality care, like you're asking for. But this last time, we also asked him to bring back the metrics plus actions, proposed actions to improve those. So we are headed in that direction. And I hope we can get more concrete results in the near future.
Go ahead, Scott.
So again, we know what direction we want to take in terms of the metrics, but there's still quite a few metrics that we are currently looking at or evaluating on a monthly basis. So again, but to succinctly report to the county board, to all of you, will be a good challenge to have, so that you can get a better picture, because it is important for you guys to understand what we're doing on the quality of care side.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Any other questions for Mr. Gima? All right, thanks again. And let's move on. Standing committees. Start with facilities, and that's Mr. James.
Mr. Chairman, we have one item on the agenda for board approval or adoption, and that is adoption of resolution number 8587, authorizing the contract with Illinois Green Business Association to perform a green business certification program for Champaign County Brookings Administration Center.
Can I have a first, Ms. Coward, second? I'm sorry. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. The committee's first, second for would be Ms. Coward. Thank you. Discussion? Mr. James.
I'm not in favor of this initiative at this time due to budget constraints within the county. Also, I've said it many times since I've been on this board, we do a lot of studies. There's several of them that are laying around. If the money was there and we knew there was going to be a benefit of some sort to the county, I would say let's move. This is something that we can do at any time. I'd rather the money be spent on things that are needing attention. I don't think it's going to bring anything in based on what I've read and what I've seen. I mean, to me, it's going to be an inspection that's going to tell us a lot of the things that I think we already know. And also, I don't think it's going to be an in-depth testing and study of the equipment and things we have. I mean, we've had studies, we've upgraded our lights, upgraded our switches. You know, $1,500 in the scheme of things isn't a lot of money to some folks, but to others it is. And with the way things are and things we're looking at in the future, I would hope this board become a little bit more conservative when voting on issues. Thank you.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yeah, I supported this in the Facilities Committee. I believe it's a unique and inexpensive opportunity to move our county facilities forward energy-wise. I know we have taken a lot of efforts. I know there's some things that we've done, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and for $1,500, I'd like to know what we don't know.
Josh?
Yeah, I disagree with the assertion that this is not going to save the county money. This is going to save us money. We're going to find ways to save on our electrical expenditures. We're going to find access to grant monies to replace the chillers we're talking about doing, to work on the roofs we're talking about doing in the next few years. This group has worked with the University of Illinois extensively. They were mentioned through the Food Policy Council discussion. They have a very high recommendation from Busey Bank. In fact, they have helped Busey Bank save money at many of their facilities with this. This is not just about a certification on the wall. This is about real results that have happened out there, and they've got the awards and the record to prove that they do produce results. Plus, this is important for us as a county to be a leader on energy efficiency and on green issues. And the Illinois Green Business Association is extremely excited because we are the first government body that they're going to be working directly with. They are working on Urbana and Champaign, but we're going to be a real good test case for them to see how their model that works really well in the private sector can be applied to the public sector. So I encourage my colleagues to vote for this. Thank you.
Mike?
I certainly agree with Stan that we should start following up and applying the results of these studies that we're doing. I certainly agree with Mr. Hartke that I think it's pretty likely that we are going to save a lot more than $1,500 when we apply some of their things. For one, this building wasn't exactly built as a county building. It's kind of low-hanging fruit to try to make this particular building we're in now more energy efficient. And I think while we're saving the taxpayers money, we can probably reduce our carbon footprint. We spend a lot of money on utilities and some low-hanging fruit there.
Mr. McGuire?
I won't be supporting this. I was there during the first discussion about this issue, and we talk about finding this $1,500 and the issues that would be with the buildings, and to do those additional things will cost us even more money when we have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of problems in our buildings that we really need to address first before we start doing these types of fixes in the buildings. So it's better to go ahead and start loading the facilities funds in to fix the roofs and things that are really problems.
Mr. Langenheim, make sure you turn on your microphone, please. Thank you, and bring it up so you can.
I'd like to see a roll call vote.
Second? Okay, second. Any other, Patsy?
Yes. What I'm having trouble understanding from my colleagues on the board who are indicating that they will not support this is how we can better get them to appreciate and understand that for this small increment of investment related to the return rate on what we then would save the county that then could be used on these other projects that you're talking about that we need money to do perplexes me. And I shared with Mr. James this evening, and I've shared with some of the rest of my colleagues on the board, the publication and information from Lakeland College and what they are doing to create their college to be a carbon neutral campus. And one of the pieces of information that I've shared is the whole financial statement of how much they are saving by the investment of what they are doing on that campus. So I think we have a lot of proof, not only around here, but across the country, that when one takes these steps to become or work toward being carbon neutral, that the gain is economically so satisfying that it helps the budget, and then it allows us to do many of the other things that we say we can't do because we don't have money. So obviously, I will be supporting this.
Mr. James?
Yes, I just wanted to add, too, that sometimes when we look at technology in the marketplace, with or without studies or other grants, technology eventually catches up with all of us. Cell phones have, computers have, what have you. These things are coming. I don't think, in my mind, that I really need a study to tell me that there's things out there that we can get. And as far as getting grant money, I have yet to see any company that can guarantee us a grant. We still have to write it. We still have to tell them why we need it. And without the staff to do those things, if they're busy with other duties, we're not going to get it done.
Well, if we're going to be replacing a bunch of roofs, for $1,500, I'd want to know how to do that in the best possible way, because I've seen enough of not doing it in the best possible way.
Thank you, Ms. Berkson. Mr. Harper?
Yeah, okay, $1,500 is not a lot of money in the study, whatnot. But I've been sitting here, okay, you got, we have a cash cow in a nursing home. We have a jail study that people want to spend money on and educate all these programs. I do not see any increases in revenue in this county. I'm sitting there and I don't know what everybody wants to do, but you better prioritize what you want and where you need it, because you can't have everything.
Any further discussion? Mr. Mitchell?
After doing a study, how do you implement the results of the study to the staffs?
That answer, Mr. Harkey, can you help us with that?
The will of this board to follow up on something for once, maybe?
Diane?
In many cases, and I agree, we can't have everything at once. It's not the money, it's the implementation after the fact when we already have quite a few things that we're looking at right now. And in many cases, you can ask your staff. I mean, the staff is a great resource, and give them a little incentive or bonus to come up with some ideas, and at least they will follow through because they'll take some ownership. It might not be the big picture, but we have other big pictures right now, and it's hard to concentrate on everything at once and give it its due justice.
Mr. Carter, please. Mr. Schroeder, did you have your hand up? All right. Is there any other? Mr. Richards?
Well, I just want to make clear, because I think the questions, where is the money, have been asked in good faith. Assuming this goes correctly, and certainly people are free to say people pushing this are out of their minds and this isn't going to work. But assuming this works correctly, our utilities are, if I remember correctly, they're either high six figures or seven figures every year. If we save money, that's where the money is on our utilities.
Any other discussion? Mr. McGuire?
It's the implementation of the study that costs more money that we don't have to spend because we've got to fix everything else in the buildings. I mean, and you don't save the money from the power bill up front. You have to have that money on hand.
Mr. Esri?
I just want to make a comment. The low-hanging fruit has been mentioned. I think we do a pretty good job of picking the low-hanging fruit in and of ourselves with our facility directors and the people in the buildings. It's the higher hanging fruit that you have to spend money to get that. And I, too, don't believe that we necessarily have the money unless that is truly the will of the board to get that higher hanging fruit, because the higher you go, the more it costs to get there.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Michaels? No. Mitchell? No. Petrie? Yes. Quisenberry? Yes. Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
Yes.
Schrader? Nope. Schwartz? Yes. Alex? Yes. Bergson? Yes. Carter? Yes. Cowart? Yes. Esri?
No.
Harper?
No.
Hartke?
Yes.
James?
No.
Jay?
No.
Kibler?
No.
Langenheim?
Yes.
Maxwell?
No.
McGuire?
No.
Kurtz?
Yes. Motion carries. Calm down. We move on. That's it from Mr. James? Thank you, sir. Mr. Langenheim, microphone, please. Thank you. Move it over to you. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, just that.
Okay. I move adoption of resolution number 8387, authorizing the contract with Illinois. Oh, excuse me, that's not my line. I move adoption of resolution number 8589, authorizing the fiscal year 2014 county planning contract with county planning contract. Okay, now we have something off of the consent agenda. I got it. I move adoption of resolution number 8504, denying petition to authorize the zoning ordinance by boy, I can hardly see this. Reclassifying certain property. This is the airstrip.
Second.
We pulled this off. We have discussion, obviously. So, Mr. Quisenberry would like to say something to this motion.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think it's important that we recognize that items that may have come out of committee by unanimous vote can still be discussed at the full board. So always remember that. I wanted this pulled off because of a couple reasons. I'm having a hard time voting for this One of the reasons why I'm having a hard time voting for this is because I believe there may be a legal path that may end up having this airstrip exist anyway without any kind of input as far as what the restrictions on it are. And so I would rather see that proceed, if it's going to happen, I'd rather see that proceed with limitations being negotiated as was discussed before. The other reason I wanted it off is I wanted to say that I'm not, although I'm concerned about that, I'm not sure that the path that was taken as to what was requested by the person making the request made a lot of sense. So if I do end up voting for this denial, it will be more about the fact that I don't necessarily believe changing this to agriculture is the right way for this to have been done. And then the other thing I wanted to get on the record is in the process of watching what was going on with ELUC, there were a lot of statements made about the safety of the airstrip, and I found some of those arguments to be the exaggeration of risk that I'm personally not satisfied with, where individuals take anecdotal evidence of risk and don't translate it into the actual statistical risk and make it bigger than it is. So I would not be persuaded by that. So I will probably vote to deny because that's the will of ELUC, but I did want to have a chance to say those things.
That's fine. Mr. Alex.
Just a comment. This was a recommendation from ELUC to deny, so my understanding is a yes vote is to deny and a no vote is to not deny, so a
Yes,
little
sir,
bit
and it was
confusing,
unanimous at ELUC.
But that's what the vote means. I guess I have to agree with Mr. Quisenberry. I mean, I've been a plan commissioner before, and rezoning requests follow a reasonably predictable pattern. There's always one person in favor and a whole lot of people against. You know, it's just the way it works. You know, the landowner's generally the one who wants it, and the neighbors are generally not excited about it. Zoning's not a popularity contest, and I've learned to take claims of adverse impact with a grain of salt. I think this case is not much different. I also think some of the concerns about safety, some of the concerns about adverse impact may have been overstated by the surrounding landowners, but the bottom line for me is I think that the request itself, without regard to the airstrip issue, I think the request itself fails to rise to the level that would justify converting this land from CR to ag. And it certainly, I think, fails to rise to the level that would convince me as a county board member to go against the recommendation of the ZBA or ELUC in this, which is generally my pattern. So I'm going to support the denial, but I think we needed to get on the record sort of some of the reasoning that was behind that.
Mr. Langenheim.
Just for the record, I would like to remind the board that the sheriff of this county and the sheriff of the county to the south of this have endorsed this.
Okay. Ms. Burks.
I don't know how many of you would like a helicopter winding up 150 feet from your house. I mean, you have to wear earplugs at that distance. It's a terrible sound. And now with this new big plane, bigger than a B-51, is that new strip long enough, really? How long has it been landed on a grass strip? I think it's a bit much.
All right, we'll go with Mr. Shodon first, and then if no one else, Mr. Quisenberry.
I think what Mr. Alex brought up was the old adage, not in my backyard, when it comes to zoning changes and zoning uses and variances of those who surround the property that's in question. Just since this was brought out of purgatory, I just want to say that I want to emphasize that the primary use of this land that's being proposed will not be agriculture when it comes to an RLA. And if you think, and I would highly doubt that if the board would send this back with new findings to the ZBA, that they would be inclined to grant a permit for a RLA. They probably would have to be something that the court would force. And I think you touched on that, Mr. Quisenberry, that may particularly happen, but I think with the federal aeronautic, I can't say that, FAA rules, thank you very much. Thank God for acronyms. I think there would be enough consequences there that would obviously not satisfy the landowners around there. After all, we are dealing with private property rights, and the courts do tend to follow property rights, sometimes against those with property nearby areas of question. So if this goes to court, and I'm sure it will, I think just the idea that this is an area that is conservation, but it also is agriculture, and the two mix together when it comes to agricultural production, and also that there is a right to farm act in this county, and I think that was brought up today, and I think when it comes to this case, it's a moot point. Thank you.
Any other? Ms. Petrie first and Mr. Carter. Ms. Bergson will go after Mr. Quisenberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Fletcher is still in the room. Would it be all right if he comes to the microphone for several questions? Mr. Fletcher was kind enough to answer these questions during the ELEC meeting, but the rest of the board hasn't heard the questions, and I'm assuming the answers will be somewhat similar. I'll try to remember how I worded the questions previously. My first question is in relationship to if an RLA is approved for a site, does that RLA run with the land?
You're talking about approval by the Department of Transportation?
Yes.
And I do not believe it runs with the land. I think a new owner would have to file a new application.
Okay. My second is there has been during public participation by Mr. Singleton, a clear indication, I believe twice now, that this will be taken to court. And there has been, an, I don't know if it's direct, but implied suggestion that there is a comparison between the Jones situation and the Geddes decision. In your expertise and your judgment, is there a parallel, or do you consider these cases fairly different?
I'm going to expand on that question a little, if you don't mind.
Please do.
I do think that there are some reasonable distinctions that can be made between this case and the Gertis case. I'm not going to go into great detail about those, but the scale of the agricultural operation at issue in the Gertis case was much bigger than that which is suggested here. There was no suggestion of non-agricultural uses in the Gertis case like there is here. There's testimony here about the airstrip being used as a hobby, the planes being an investment, no revenue being generated from the planes. I'm not saying that it would be a slam dunk in the circuit court, but there are some reasonable distinctions that can be made between this case and the Gertis case. But more to the point, and I'm going to be blunt here, what happens in court is not really relevant to the county board's vote on this case. The court decides what our zoning jurisdiction is under the statute. It's your, with all due respect, it's the vote before the board here is how to exercise that jurisdiction, assuming it exists. No vote here is going to change what a circuit court does in terms of construing the agricultural exception. And there's nothing you can do to reduce that legal risk in taking. There's nothing you can do to change what a circuit court's going to, how the circuit court's going to construe the agricultural exception in taking your vote. I would add the best thing that you could do in terms of reducing legal risk here is to make a decision on the merits without regard to the agricultural exception. I think the more you try to insert that question, which has nothing to do with this county board's role, into this decision-making process, the more you increase the legal risk. I would ask you to apply the LaSalle factors. I think that I could justify either result to a circuit court more easily than I can justify some kind of process where we consider the agricultural exception in making our decision here at the county board level.
Okay, and the last one that I would like everybody to hear your thoughts on, Mr. Schroeder brought in the issue of property rights. The residents, I think it's what, 32 or 33 residential sites were already there and established before this was brought forward, and one of those residential sites, the property line is 100 feet from the landing strip, and I believe the foundation of the house is 150, if I'm remembering facts correctly. How does the primacy of those residents having been there and established merit against this request for the zoning change?
You asked me that question at the committee level, and I think I may have overstated my point. There is generally a principle that favors the first use, but that is a very weak principle. I think that the LaSalle factors really should be your guiding. You really should provide the standard you apply here. I think that any inference you can draw from the first use is probably weak, and you're better suited. You're better served by just following the LaSalle factors.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Fletcher. And I do have one comment, whether the sheriff thinks this would be wonderful and approve it, that has no merit on land use.
All right, first round, Mr. Carter.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I think it'd be very fruitful if we go back to caucus, each side on this matter, and get the consensus of both sides, and we won't have to sit up here for hours and hours trying to analyze this.
All right,
I would like to see that. Send it back.
Are you making a motion here, Mr. Carter?
Yeah, I'll make that motion to go back to both caucus
Okay.
of this body,
Is that
and then come back with consensus of what they want to do.
Yeah, where you,
Huh? Well, then meet together, bring us both parties together.
We've been talking about this for months. This is the second time it's come out of ELOC and out of the ZBA, and we've been discussing this, and we've had public participation at least twice now at county board meetings. So I don't see how we can justify, again, sending it back anyway. I think it's time for a vote here. Mr. James.
I'd like to call the question.
All right, question is called. I have a second for the roll call. So, okay, second. Oh, of course. If Mr. Langenheim doesn't first, he's going to second, so, all right.
Mr. Chair, could you restate what
Yeah,
the
I'll
meaning of a
restate
yes
the
and no vote
motion.
is? Thank you.
A yes will deny this, will deny this reclassification, okay? A yes denies the reclassification. Roll call, please.
Michaels? Yes. Mitchell? No. Petrie? Yes. Quisenberry? No. Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
Schwartz? Yes. Alex? Yes. Bergson? Yes. Carter? Yes. Cowart? Yes. Esri? Yes. Harper? Yes. Hartke?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kibler?
Yes.
Langenheim? No. Maxwell?
Yes.
McGuire? Yes. Kurtz?
Yes, motion carries to deny reclassification. Thank you. It's now 9 o'clock, 7-minute break. We just finished ELOC. We're up to Highway. Ms. Cowart.
The Highway, the Highway and Transportation Committee has nothing for board consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we don't need to vote on this. All right, let's move on. Let's go to finance. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Finance moves adoption of resolution number 8591, payment of claims authorization.
Second.
Finance moves adoption of resolution number 8592, purchases not following the purchasing policy. I move adoption of resolution number 8590, authorizing the execution of a service agreement with the lowest responsible bidder for the supply of electricity for residential and small retail customers who do not opt out of such a program.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Who are you handing the gavel to, Mr. Chair?
To the vice chair.
Thank you.
Of course.
Recognize Mr. Kurtz.
Thank you. I have to recuse myself from this. I'm in the energy business. Thank you.
All right, I'll pass the chair back there.
Call the vote.
Not pass the chair back.
I'm passing it back
All
to you.
right, all right. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Kurtz. Finance moves adoption of resolution number 8593, authorizing budget amendment 13-00042, $179,000 appropriation from the court's construction fund, and I would like to speak to this motion. If it,
Go right ahead.
Mr. Chair, after discussion with the county administrator, we've concluded that this money there's no way this money is going to be needed to be spent in this budget year. So I would propose that we vote no on this and ask the county administrator to put it in next year's budget.
Would you like to concur on that?
I agree.
She agrees. I, too, concur. Any other discussion? Ms. Petrie?
I am for deferring this, but in the timeframe that we do have with deferral, I would like to see further ascertain of the primary cause of this problem, because we're just putting a temporary Band-Aid on this. The building does need to be tightened up, but we do need to know why this is happening, or we'll just be doing it again in 5 to 10 years. So I hope that we have that in our next round of discussion.
I just hope that we're not taking this as an excuse to pass this up. Constant maintenance of buildings is necessary if you want them to remain standing, and we have plenty of examples in the history of this county when we've paid dearly for not doing routine maintenance.
I assure Mr. Langenheim this is not a subterfuge. We just want to get it in next year's budget.
Just curious as to why this can't be done this year. I'm sure there's a very good reason. And then secondly, does it put us at any risk as the building? I know this was something we're trying to patch up to save off future costs, so what's the sort of impact there?
We never believed that we were going to get to the point of actually awarding the bids until late this year at best, which means we wouldn't start paying for construction costs until next fiscal year. There's $125,000 budgeted in this year's budget for this project in this fund, and that will take care of any of the expenses that we would have yet this year to keep this moving forward.
Mr. Carter?
Yeah, Dale, is this part of the new construction, that building, or the old?
It's both.
Huh?
It is both.
Both?
Yes, there is masonry repair scheduled for both the new addition and the 1901 courthouse.
Is that part of the construction that we paid for last?
Well, the new addition was completed in 2001.
Yeah.
So it's 12 years old. And the 1901 courthouse was effectively remodeled then on the inside, and we did some exterior work that was completed in '07.
Well, what confuses me is we keep a spending money after we spent $27 million to contract this project. And every time we turn around, there's something wrong. So I can't understand really what's going on with it.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. McGuire.
Do we have any idea how much damage will be caused to the buildings if the cracks are freezing for the winter season if this work isn't done?
Well, again, this is not changing the schedule or pace of this project.
Okay.
I still don't understand.
All in favor? Is there, oh, that's right, it's 15 votes. Sorry. Roll call, please.
Michaels.
We're to.
Mitchell. Petrie. Quisenberry. Richards.
No.
Rosales.
Yes.
Schrader. Schwartz. Alex. Bergson. Carter.
Nope.
Cowart.
No.
Esri. Harper. Hartke. James. Jay. Kibler. Langenheim. Maxwell. McGuire. Kurtz.
No. Motion fails.
Thank you, Mr. Kurtz. I move adoption of resolution number 8597, authorizing budget amendment 13-00043. This is $55,000 revenue neutral pass-through for the Regional Planning Commission for Shelter Care Plus.
All right, this is a roll call, and we need 15 votes for passage. What's that? I need a I'm sorry. A second was Mr. Mitchell. Oh, it was Mr. Hartke? All right, we'll pass the buck. Mr. Hartke was second. We'll need 15 votes on this. Roll call, please.
Michaels. Yes. Mitchell. Yes. Petrie. Yes. Quisenberry. Yes. Richards. Yes. Rosales. Yes. Schrader.
Yes.
Schwartz. Alex. Yes. Bergson. Yes. Carter.
Yes.
Cowart.
Yes.
Esri. Yes. Harper. Yes. Hartke.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Kibler.
Yes.
Langenheim.
Yes.
Maxwell.
Yes.
McGuire.
Yes.
Kurtz.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move adoption of resolution number 8598, authorizing budget amendment 13-00044. There's a $20,000 pass-through federal money to the Regional Planning Commission for their homeless management information system.
Second? Second, Mr. Esri. Same thing, we need a roll call with 15 votes for passage. Roll call, please.
Michaels. Yes. Mitchell. Yes. Petrie. Yes. Quisenberry.
Yes.
Richards.
Yes.
Rosales.
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
Schwartz. Alex.
Yes.
Bergson. Carter.
Yes.
Cowart.
Yes.
Esri.
Yes.
Harper.
Yes.
Hartke.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Kibler.
Yes.
Langenheim. Maxwell.
Yes.
McGuire.
Yes.
Kurtz.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I could just take this moment to make a couple of comments with regard to the budget process, since we
Go
didn't have
for
this
it.
elsewhere on the agenda.
Sure do.
On your table in front of you, you have 3 nights' worth of books. These are the preliminary draft budgets, which the county administrator is going to be the addendum we pulled. We've got the budget books. This is essentially our first look at what the county administrator thinks we're going to have to work with for the budget. So please take a look at them. Make all of the legislative budget hearings that you can. They're next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evening. Please bring the book with you when you come. There's one book for each night. There's not one book for each night?
Hold on.
There are 2 books for Monday night. You need both of the black books Monday night, the white book Tuesday night, and the slimmer, not the RPC, but the black book that has both Monday and Wednesday in it on Wednesday.
That's why she's the county administrator and I'm not. The other comment I wanted to make is just the general process here. We're going to hear from the county administrator about what's in the books next week. The first opportunity for the board to hear, to discuss them and decide what direction we want to take will be the committee of the whole meeting in September, which is September 10th. I am concerned that that is going to be a very lengthy meeting, and we don't know what will be on the agenda of the other committees. So what I would like to do is, I'd like to ask board members to try to keep the following Tuesday open. My intention is we'll do finance last, in the committee of the whole, the main committee of the whole meeting in September. If we do end up here until the middle of the night, or people feel like we're not making progress, I'd like the opportunity to continue that meeting to the following Tuesday, which would be the Tuesday immediately preceding the full board meeting. So it's up, we're not gonna schedule it. It's up to the board to decide whether or not we need the time. I think we'll know that during the committee of the whole meeting, but I want people to be aware that we have that option of recessing that meeting and picking it up the next Tuesday if it goes very late. And one more finance comment to Mr. Richards. I believe the Democratic Caucus is wants to have a town meeting budget hearing type event in Champaign, and I'd like him to talk about that.
Okay, yeah. My oversight, I should have brought this up in member communications. September 4th at the 7 p.m., the Champaign City Council chambers, the Democratic Caucus is sponsoring a participatory budget hearing. Feel free to show up. We're encouraging community input to hear what community groups and citizens want in the budget, and hopefully we will dialogue a little bit with them. This is, of course, not an official county event. That's Wednesday, September 4th, 7 p.m., and as of right now, it's going to be at the Champaign City Council chambers.
Ms. Petrie?
May I ask Mr. Alex a logistic question?
I'll try.
Okay, thank you very much. I wonder if it would work better if we just say finance will be on that Tuesday you're asking to reserve, so in relationship to the public coming and making comments and, as sort of a courtesy to the public, because if finance will be at the end, as you stated, that means they've stayed through, a lot, so. Will you consider that, I guess?
I guess I would say, I guess my primary concern with that is, obviously, we've calendared the committee of the whole meeting for a long time, so I think people expect to know when the committee of the whole meeting is. The other issue that may arise is I think we may have questions during that meeting that we want to have the county administrator bring us additional information about, and this would give us the opportunity to, identify questions during that initial committee of the whole meeting. If we feel like we can't get them answered then, and we do end up continuing, the county administrator will have a chance to bring additional information to us after that. So I think it will work out better as suggested, but I understand your concern. I would encourage the public to not, the public knows how to contact their county board members. They know when our meetings are, and they don't have to be at every meeting to be heard. So I think it'll probably work out better the way it was proposed, but I appreciate your comment.
Okay, I'm sorry, you want to question, Mr.?
I just have a question. It's off topic, but since it's been brought up, with the Democrat caucus having this town hall meeting, will there be any staff involved with this? County board staff?
No, it's not a county event at all. No county staff, just
But if you're
no
gonna-
minutes.
If you're going to be discussing this with entire caucus, wouldn't that be considered an open meeting act
Well,
violation?
we'll certainly notice it.
What's that? You're going to notice it?
Yeah, we're certainly.
Okay, you will notice it
certainly
and
gonna notice
and
it.
post
Yeah,
it?
you have
It's
Okay, that-
basically
'cause I
going to
didn't-
be
I
another
didn't
Democratic
realize.
caucus
Okay.
meeting,
Well,
open to everyone, Republicans too, but,
I just wanted clarification with that, so.
yeah, that's correct. This is-
Okay.
Yeah, no action will be
This is
taken.
not a
It's essentially
secret
a town-
budget
it's
hearing
essentially a
that
town
people
hall
are missing
meeting.
out on.
Okay. Gary, did you have something you wanted to say?
I was a little more concerned about the Open Meetings Act than that. If you have a quorum there, which you'd be close to it, and also the need to keep good records and even minutes might be appropriate. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Mr. Richards, you want to respond?
Well, to clarify, it's not going to be a county board meeting, but because of your concerns, it's going to be a caucus meeting, and just like a regular Democratic Party caucus meeting, there will be minutes kept, and we will have to notice it because we're hoping that a majority of a quorum shows up.
Ms. Petrie?
Maybe Mr. Richards could arrange with the city of Champaign to have it videoed, not live streamed, but then can be shown later. So that would cover some of these concerns and also broaden the base of people who cannot attend at that time. I understand it's the beginning of a religious holiday, so some people might not be able to attend and could see it later on.
Patsy, they're going to charge you for it. I hope you guys are putting money together on it. All right, is there any other question? Is there any other questions on that? Okay, thank you. Let's move on to Mr. Quisenberry and policy for the final, hopefully, final resolution tonight.
Yes, Mr. Kurtz, I move adoption of resolution number 8596, authorizing the appointment of Mark Shaw to the Fountainhead Drainage District, term to be 9/1/2013 through 8/31/2016, and I so move.
Second, I'm sorry, who's that? Second, Mr. Jay and Mr. Schroeder, please.
As the mover,
Mr.
I would
Schroeder.
appreciate the
Discussion, Mr. Schroeder.
Mr. Kurtz, as the mover, I would appreciate to speak first.
Go ahead.
And I would like to encourage the county board to consider a motion to defer this item for the purpose of giving that group in the city of Champaign more time to come to a final agreement before we make a final appointment, or approve this appointment, because, well, they seem to be getting pretty close, and I think we should wait and see if they get it done.
Do I need a second for that motion, Mr.? Oh, you didn't make a motion. Okay, fine. So we'll have discussion on the main motion. Mr. Schroeder.
I apologize for not attending last Tuesday's committee of the whole. I happened to be in vacation. I was out of town, but to my disbelief, my family watched in amazement as I streamed the proceedings live in my hotel room. So, as if I didn't have anything better to do. I can't get rid of you people. You know, you're really stuck on me. But anyway, belays the point. What I noticed was, I think the whole idea of what this appointment is was kind of missed, because this is a reappointment actually, in Mr. Shaw with, in fact, Mr. Kurtz making an appointment, so it's a reappointment to the Drainage District. And a few comments I have is what I'm scared of, or what I've seen that bothers me, is this is being framed as not something that the district does really well overall, but something that it hasn't done, and it gets the finger pointed at it all the time, and that's decoupling. And decoupling goes back to 1992. And Ms. Petrie and I attended the Fountainhead Drainage District meeting together, and we got information. And I shared with my caucus, and I assumed she would share with her caucus, but a timeline of 3 pages from the Fountainhead Drainage District from 1992, when the city of Champaign approached the district for decoupling. So it's been since 1992, these negotiations have been going on. If you go through the list, what you find is the city keeps wanting to detach like they did the Finney Branch. And negotiation goes on over months. They try to make agreements 60 days, 30 days, no response from the city. And what happens is, after that has discovered, it seems like a new layer of employees come on board, because the city is negotiating with, and no offense to the city administrators or the engineers that have been negotiating, but there is turnover over in the city of Champaign. So you go a few months or a year or two trying to negotiate, and all of a sudden there's a new group of people come on with the city planning staff or engineering staff. So you go over this dance all over again since 1992. And I got involved with this in 2011, which part of the Finney was my old district, District 3, County Board 3, which it isn't anymore in District 4. But I got involved with this early on. I attended a couple Fountainhead District meetings. I saw their frustration. And when you go back to 1992, there were 2 members that are, I believe, I know one for a fact is deceased. So you're dealing with a member who's been on that board for 40 years. He was there at a particular time in 92. And you have a member, two other members that weren't there in the inception. So this has affected at least two different boards, if you consider two as a majority of a three-member board. You've had two different boards, succinctly, trying to work with the city of Champaign. And the comments have been made that we need to get these together for get closer, to close a chasm, to get this agreement, this decoupling agreement. And like I said, I got involved with it because I wanted to hear both sides. So I went to let's see, I'll go down here. The September 20th City Council study session, and this is one of the topics on their study session. And before this, the city staff had recommended, and Champaign does this really well, remedies in 3. So they had 3 remedies to get this impasse over. 1 was to keep negotiating. 2 was to sue in court to decouple. 3 was to replace all 3 board members and put urban members in as district board members. Now that's disturbing to me, that I think it's a kick in the shins of this county board that they think they can come in here and change our statutory duty to this county and not reflect the whole county, because everybody that lives in this county, everybody, it doesn't care if you're in a municipality or you're outside the municipality, unincorporated area. You have two members on this board for representation. I don't have representation in the City Council of Champaign, but a lot of things they do affect me, indirectly and directly. So when I went to this study session, usually you're trying to get all the information. And what I heard from the City Council was absolutely 180 degrees from what I learned from the Drainage District Board, what they had somewhat accepted, both parties, for this decoupling. And what I heard from them was absolutely a spit in the face of the Drainage District Board from the staff. I was absolutely shocked. And I spoke at that study session, and I tried to get concession, or I tried to get resolution that we all need drainage in this county. We all need drainage. It's like Frank Nanova once said, this county is 36 square miles of hydraulic soils. And he's exactly right. We wouldn't be here unless we drain, and we need outlets to drain. And the district itself is not a public service, or it's not it's a drainage. It's a rural drainage, like Mr. J said last Tuesday. It's a rural drainage district. It can't tax its way out of getting large amounts of funds to do urban projects. But on the other side, it's amazing, because after that meeting, and I'll forward up to December of 2012, last December, where I sat in the district board meeting with the representative of City of Champaign, and I'm not picking on her because she's been very good about it, and that's Eleanor Blackman. And I sat there and listened. And she can't speak totally for the City of Champaign, but she obviously can, because she's representing the City of Champaign. And what I sat there and listened was, there was agreement on almost everything. The dollar amount was a sticking point, but everything else was an agreement. After that, back I think in March, the city responded and said, no, we don't agree with that, but we need some changes. So here we go again, over and over again. In 2011, the Fountainhead Drainage District had plans to fix what ails Washington Street. They had a plan, and they presented it to the City of Champaign. But if you're sitting on the city council member, the city council, and you have that district, and you're already looking at the stormwater utility tax, and you're going to add another tax to pay for that stormwater repair, you probably won't be long-lived in that city council. So that's kind of what happened. That city utility tax came on board the same time they wanted that, and the city said, no way, you're not going to fix it. That's not going to be done. So Ms. Petrie and I have been trying, and we're going to try, I assume I am, to try and help the the cities in the drainage district, whichever the board decides, but you have someone on there that's very knowledgeable right now that's going to be, I hope, reappointed. I'll support him. That's very knowledgeable about this. And once again, let me say that you haven't heard any complaints about repairs from damage in the drainage district. You haven't heard any of those complaints. All we've heard is, and I feel for the people that have water, but when you're paying for that type of drainage, your water doesn't stay there for 6 days or 10 days or 15 days or 30 days. It goes out. If you didn't have that outlet, you'd still have water there until it basically dehydrated from the sun or whatever. So I just want the board to know that this is being framed as an issue of decoupling, especially in section six, in sub 7. And if the city would come with someone, because Dennis Schmidt has been to one drainage district meeting, one, that's it. Everybody else has been assistant engineer or some low-level engineer. No offense to them, but they don't have the authority. And this thing's been going on way too long to where if you put someone else on there, that there's going to be a real hard learning curve on this. But the other point, too, is I want to make is, I challenge the city council to come up with a solution and diligently work towards this. Instead of just passing the buck. And like I said, that study session, usually you get everything out on the table, all the information. Not one person from that drainage district board was allowed to speak unless it was during the public comment period, which is 5 minutes. That's it. Nobody else was allowed to speak. No one else was allowed to talk. So if they're interested, let's see them do it by, let's see it instead of words, let's see them do it by deed. That's what I want to see. I want to see this done by deed instead of words all the time. Enough of this pointing a finger and attacking these three gentlemen who've been very, very, very dedicated to this. And I'll go as far as to say they have personal reasons. They have farmland in this district, so they really, really have a stake in this too. Along with the landowners that have houses and residential areas, they have a stake too. But they live within the city limits of the city of Champaign. And that's where the crossing point is, right there. There needs to be discussion with everybody, and that's not happening. And I've told Ms. Petrie I'm going to work to try and get someone there, maybe the new city manager or her deputy there, to try and get this deadlock done, because this has gone way too long. And believe you me, the district wants to decouple. They want it decoupled. And where they started out money-wise, they've come down and they're willing to negotiate. But when you send something back to the city and you think you have an agreement, that agreement with a lower level individual from the administration, and it comes back and it says no. And the deadlines of 60 days, 90 days go by from the city. When they say they're going to do something, they don't do something. And the other deed is we can only look at what city of Champaign, how they look at the county. Because back when the American Water Company put in their new pump station west of town, they went in Scott Township outside the 1.5 mile district. They went out there, they used Chatham, the court decision with city of Chatham to go out there. And I was at that meeting, Mr. Mosier was at that meeting, and we pleaded with the city council not to do that. The county could rezone that. The county could handle the special use, the rezoning and everything. And after the public comment period, we couldn't speak, and we were rebuffed by a high-level administrator from the city of Champaign that said, and I paraphrase, the county, because there was concerns from outside of Scott Township about how this would affect them, noise, air, water, roads, how this would affect them. And their response was, city's official response was, the county really doesn't have anything in their ordinance to make American Water put in sound buffers, either dirt berms, tree berms, anything of that sort. Absolute false. The county does. It would have been a special, or a change in the zoning ordinance, and it would have been a special use out there, and they would have been required just as much as a city ordinance would have required it. So there's a track record there with the city that I am shocked with. It has a very difficult time of working with municipalities out in the areas that are unincorporated. And it's unfortunate. I'd be happy to work with them anytime at all, especially to do this. I appreciate your.
October full board meeting, and if that receives a second, I'd like to speak to the motion to defer. Thank you. I'm not gonna throw blame around here. I agree with 95% of what Mr. Schrader said as far as what the long-term solution to this problem is. I'm no great fan of the way the city of Champaign's handled this either. My problem is I gotta decide whether to vote for this guy. I think the arguments that the Champaign residents in this drainage district make are compelling, that if they really are paying, 70-75% of the freight in this district, they're entitled to some representation on that board. If this is going to continue to be a mixed urban and rural drainage district, there should be an urban representative on it. If it is not, and I think it should not, there should not be, and I would happily reappoint this gentleman to the board. I think we need some time to determine which direction this is going, and if we can get some indication in the next month that they are in fact on a good faith course to detachment, I would wholeheartedly support this reappointment. But I don't have the information to make that decision right now, and I don't think any of the rest of us do either.
Well, this sounds to me like a $2 or $3 million problem, and drainage districts haven't got that kind of tax base. There's no way they can do it. And it sounds to me like Champaign is just avoiding a $2 or $3 million bill by keeping this thing going, by keeping the drainage district in force.
I will go ahead and vote to defer, but I don't think 2 months is going to make much difference since this fight's been going on since 1992, evidently. I will mention, though, that this feels like a very classic case of he said, she said, because much of what Mr. Schrader said, I'm hearing the exact opposite from the city council members I spoke to, including Vic McIntosh, who represents the Garden Hills area, and we share that, and Vic and I have a very good working relationship, and I really know that Vic understands public works and knows this stuff, and I certainly listen to his counsel on this. Boy, I'd like to quote Daniel McCullen, this is taxation without representation, and I thought that was a reason that we all started this little experiment over here on this side of the country. I worry that detachment is, yes, a stated goal of both the drainage district and the city, but I don't see us progressing towards that, and I'm worried that an urban member is the only way that this is going to move forward. I also feel like there's been rotation in new people on the city council. There's been new mayors in this time. There's been new city administrators, yet this drainage district has stayed pretty solid, the same people. So it feels to me like if there's a blockage here, that maybe rotating some of the people on this drainage district might be the better solution. And I just want to warn everybody that the community itself is very upset about this and very involved, and there already is a move to start a petition to make these elected positions. And I can guarantee you that the urban members will win that election. And if you're worried about this board having its authority, ceding that election authority is going to lose our control over this situation too. So, and I know they've got both the votes and the signatures to do that. And I asked them personally to hold off on collecting these signatures so we could move forward on this situation. So I will vote to defer out of the interest of finding a middle ground here and hoping people can come together. But if there is not a formal solution ready on paper, by the time we come back, I will not vote for this appointment.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kurtz, if I could clarify the motion, it was for 1 month.
The deferral is for 1 month?
I'm sorry, I misspoke. I'd like to correct that motion to the September county board meeting,
Okay.
if that's okay with the second.
Well, 1 second, I have Patsy there, I have Mr. Kibler next.
Well, he needs approval
Mr.
from the
Carter.
seconder, and we have
Who was the
to-
seconder?
For clarification.
Mr.
Are
Rosales
you
as
okay?
well.
Okay, I apologize for that, I misspoke.
It's okay. All right, we're on to Mr. Kibler.
Yeah, so a couple of points. First of all, this is on the motion to defer entirely. We're talking about being able to negotiate in good faith. If this person is not reappointed, therefore is not,
We have to stick to the motion. The motion is to defer.
the motion is to defer. I'm talking directly
Okay,
to
you wanna
that
speak to
point.
Okay,
I'm
go ahead.
asking, if the appointment is not made, if we defer this a month and this person is not reappointed today or down today, will they not be able to negotiate, or will he have no capacity to negotiate, or will they have an impact to even negotiate if we defer this today?
Until a appointment is made, the original incumbent stays on the board. Mr. Shaw will be on the board until there's either a replacement or he's reappointed. So he'll be on the board for if there's no appointment tonight, if it's deferred, he stays on.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go on. Okay, Mr. McGuire, all right, you get this list going here. Mike, you were next.
I support the motion to defer. Hopefully, a month brings a little bit of clarity. We were told last week that we should vote for this because decoupling was imminent and that then it was going to be rural, so we should leave this district as it is. The two sides can't agree on much of anything, but what we've heard both from the drainage district and especially from the city was that while in theory they would both like to decouple, they are nowhere near an agreement and don't have any idea, it might be another 20 years before they find one. And that being said, I think we need to look at whether this is going to get done or figure out if it's not getting done, and if it's going to remain urban majority, and figure out what we want to do, what our response is going to be with the city and city interest moving forward to make this elected and trying to take this over, which is also going to be equally bad, just as the urban residents are now complaining that they have no representation. I think that we also don't want to see the rural interest in this district shut out either.
Well, in the spirit of trying to get everybody on the county board a complete understanding, I sent everybody a really long email message with lots of attachments so you could join in the knowledge base of what we're talking about. I am with Mr. Schroeder. I said I would work toward trying to get the people to the table because it's very clear that it's he said, she said. But based on my communications with some city council members last night and this morning. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Sorry, you're right. My brain was going to sleep. Sorry, I apologize. I will support deferment on what I was sort of talking about, but if there is not a solid agreement and almost signed on to in a month, I will not support Mr. Shaw because I agree that the urban representation needs somebody on that board.
I want to go back to Jeff's comments about this person's ability to represent the drainage district's views on this board. If we don't, no, I mean, I'm talking about deferment because for the next month or two, since he won't be reappointed, when he's trying to negotiate for the district, and it's a district board, and it's autonomous with the city, and trying to come up with some agreement, they will look at him as somebody who really doesn't have the ability to make an agreement, because he won't, as someone who negotiates, he won't have any power because they won't know that he will either maintain his position or will have a position on the Drainage District Board if he isn't appointed tonight.
Yeah. I want to thank you, Mr. Schroeder. And I don't know why we have to come to this. That's what I'm trying to do. But I can't read your mind. I can't say what you want me to say. I have to say what's in my heart and what I feel right for the county board. That's what I'm trying to do. And what I'm getting at, I've said the last meeting when this came up, something was wrong. And I had a gut feeling there's something wrong. But it's hard to sit up here when you try to trust the other part of the committee to bring you something back and don't bring it back kosher. This is heartbreaking. Now, I was sitting up here tonight saying, how I'm going to vote when I know that this is all, we haven't heard all the facts. How you ask to vote on something, and you want to, when you vote, you want to treat your constituent right. You want to make sure you give them the best judgment that you can. But when you don't get all the facts, it's hard to do. And I'm going to support but I appreciate what you've done. And I wish we could have had this up front, not tonight, but before now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr.
The best argument I can see for deferment is the fact that we're all speaking with a tremendous amount of conviction with very little information.
I'd like to hand the, for this deferment. It seems to me that I have a statutory obligation. That obligation is to appoint an experienced person of expertise and integrity to this position. That's my statutory obligation. I found that in Mr. Shaw. Now, everybody here is talking about deferment. You're really not talking about deferment. You're talking about hanging a sword over this man's head, and you're going to say to him, you better come up with a decision by next month or you're out, because that's what I'm hearing from some of these board members. You're saying that if he doesn't come up with a decision, that you're not going to vote for him when it comes up for an appointment next month. Now, I'm sorry. That's not a way you can negotiate, and that's not the way you set a process in action to have this gentleman have either a decision for or a decision against. That's tonight. You want to vote him up or you want to vote him down. But you're not going to tell him that you are being watched and you better come up with the right decision or else you're out. I'm sorry. That's not the way you do business here. And so I will vote against deferment, and I want to vote tonight on this gentleman. All right, next.
Chair back
I'll
to
have it back.
Mr.
Thank you
Kurtz.
very much. Mr. Quisenberry.
Yeah, well, I'm still concerned that we were told that we would have a result right away, and we don't have a result. And I think everybody, almost everybody who has talked about deferment has suggested they believe this person is a good candidate for this district if it is detached. And so I don't think that's a sword over his head. I think there are people that feel very strongly if detachment's going to take 2 or 3 or 4 more years, that the population of that district needs better representation. And, that's why I probably wouldn't vote at this point if an urban person had been put up for nomination at this point, because that would be taking that side of this and giving the upper hand to another part of the organization. The problem is, and I don't know enough to know which side is the one that's skirting the truth. The problem is they've had 12 years with this person on the board to get it done and it hasn't got done. Well, if the city's been the result of that, that's fine. Leaving him on there in a temporary basis gives that urban group a stronger position for the short term. But I think, I kind of I resent being shouted at, and I resent my intentions here being characterized that way. Thank you.
Just that, after looking at this timetable, you can defer it for a month, but I don't think anything is going to happen in a month. I really don't. If you're waiting for something to happen, I think you're going to be sorely disappointed.
Can we call the question on deferment, please?
Michaels? Mitchell? Petrie? Quisenberry? Richards?
Yes.
Rosales? Schrader? Schwartz? Alex? Bergson? Carter? Cowart? Esri? Harper? Hartke? James? Jay? Kibler? Langenheim? Maxwell? That was a yes to. McGuire? Kurtz?
which is the appointment of Mr. Mark Shaw. And do you have any discussion on the main motion? Mr. Jay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't repeat what I said last meeting. It obviously didn't land on the right ears, but it is kind of disheartening to see what's happened. And what we've done in practice here, this board's responsible for, is to try and drive a stake between the urban and the rural folks, and that's wrong. We should not have done that, and that's what we're trying to do. I would like, and I've got an answer for our problem if the majority is willing to go with it. We can appoint Mark Shaw tonight, and next year there will be another appointment to be made by one of the other people, and you can, if this doesn't work out right, you've got an option to get out of it. And if they can't get it done in a year, they probably won't get it done in 5 years.
Ms. Petrie.
Absolutely unequivocally, no. The time that we need an urban person on there is now to work with the city to move this forward. Not doing that will not move things forward, so that is not a solution that I can possibly accept. I do agree with Mr. Alex, and that is, if there is detachment, it becomes rural, and indeed, you need rural representation. But as long as that is predominantly an urban drainage district, at a minimum, one individual out of the three needs to be urban, and the support, the money for that drainage district comes from those urban folks. So they're getting double taxed and no representation. And I do not think as a county board, we should sit here tonight and even wonder how we should vote.
Anybody? Oh, Mr. Jay, then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could just say a couple of more things. One of it, we're not responsible for the double tax. The county's not responsible for anything other than the appointment of this person to the Drainage District Board. That's all our responsibility is. You're trying to make it more than it really is, and you're trying to create a division between those folks and the rural folks, and that's just wrong. We're a county board. We represent the county. We represent those folks and the folks that live in the rural county. The other thing that's prevalent to me that you all don't even look at, this young man that we're not going to, or trying not to appoint tonight, has served magnificently on this board for several terms. He's done an outstanding job. He's a young man. He's got a lot left to give. He has the knowledge and the authority of what Mr. Schrader's went through there. Anybody that comes on this board, Cole's going to get a rude awakening. When you go to replace somebody, you have to have a reason. What has he done wrong that you don't like, except he's not the right guy. He lives in the wrong part of the district. That's the only thing you've got against him. If he was in that area, you would have voted for him, but because he's not, you won't. He's done a good job. If you're going to replace the man that's working for you, you have to have a really reasonable reason, and you don't have a reasonable reason.
Mr. J, all due respect, the stake is driven. We're not driving the stake. I mean, the stake is driven in the fact that this drainage district is not responding to the needs of a majority of its residents. And the problem with this gentleman may not be his experience or the time he served, but he has been a part of a drainage district that has failed for 20-plus years to get this detachment through. And if the difference is a matter of numbers between 50, the numbers I have been quoted is 55,000 is where the state, or where the city's willing to go. That is half of Sub-District 7's total assessment, which is $105,000. I don't understand why the drainage district believes it's entitled to that entire sub-district's tax levy when it's no longer going to be serving that sub-district, except once the water gets off of it. Again, I don't see this as being, we're trying to isolate someone who's out in the rural areas. I am more than happy to have rural members on this board. It's about getting an urban member on board who is very qualified, just as qualified from his experience. And, you know, everybody talks about a learning curve on these boards. I mean, come on, folks. New people can come in and learn how to handle things and do their job responsibly. And maybe, again, I say, when the problem is a logjam and the problem is gridlock, breaking it up a little bit and getting some new blood in might be a solution.
We have Patsy McGuire and then Langenheim and then Carter. Thank you. Patsy.
Thank you very much. Mr. Harkey did make several of the points that I wanted to make. First of all, the assumption is that the urban candidate is coming into the situation with no knowledge. That is absolutely incorrect. The urban candidate's been working on this water problem the whole time they're being flooded in West Washington, so that's fallacious. Second, I think it's a little disingenuous for the chair of this board to put down the qualifications of one of the candidates as compared to the other when you described Mr. Shaw as compared to Mr. Houston. That was not very generous
I'm sorry,
to
I
do
didn't
that.
compare Mr. Houston to Mr. Shaw at all. I
No,
gave you the
by
attributes of Mr.
implication you
Shaw and why I
did.
picked him.
By implication you did, by the way.
Maybe your implication, but it didn't come from me. It came from your perception.
Okay, fine. And still, the main issue is that the urban people put 75% of the money into this, and they still have no representation. And that just is not the way things should be.
Okay, we have Mr. McGuire.
I'm an urban county board member, and I represent Tolono as part of my district. Does that mean that they don't have any representation on the county board? Obviously, you know, the drainage district, you know, has 3 representatives that represent the whole district. So to say that they don't have representation, I'm not sure that that's true. The thing we're trying to do here is fix this problem. It seems like people are focusing on the drainage district as the problem when there are 2 people involved, that the city's involved too. And from what I've heard all night long is that they seem to be the issue since 1992, which everybody seems to want to work to get them more involved to correct this issue. It sounds like the people with the most experience are the ones that have been on the drainage district board for a long period of time, just like many of the people on this board who've been here for a long time know more about what's happening with the county board and are more prepared to answer some of the questions that happen with the county. And that's been my experience for my short period of time that I've been here. I think it's better to keep someone on the drainage district that's been there for a while that might understand how to get something accomplished, especially if we're going to put this much focus on fixing the drainage problems in the urban area of the city.
Mr. Langenheim.
I've been through about 3 of these things on this county board. It's a recurring problem. Let's look at it this way. The drainage districts were established for a specific purpose, a narrowly defined purpose. That is to drain the cornfields so we could plow them. The urban district is an entirely different district. It's paved over. It doesn't absorb water. It doesn't grow any crops, and it's crawling with people. The drainage of a city is the responsibility of the city. The drainage of the country is the responsibility of these drainage districts. Now, I hold no brief for the efficiency, and there are a lot of things that the drainage districts should do now that they don't do. For example, they're not really concerned with the environment very much. All they're interested in is getting the water off of the fields. And they don't cover the whole county. We don't have drainage districts over the whole county. They need to be revised, badly need to be revised, but that's another matter. But we do have to get the city, the urbanized areas out of those rural drainage districts. It has to be done. And I'm changing my mind periodically in this meeting because it's really pretty stormy. I think you know that. But I now see Al Kurtz's point. We have a responsibility as a board to appoint somebody. And I do indeed believe that the man that Kurtz has selected best fits the responsibilities of the drainage districts. Now, those of you that are in the city of Champaign, lean on your city council. That seems to be, to me, where the problem is right now. But, well, I think I've said too much. I'll just shut up.
Thank you, Mr. Langenheim. I have Mr. Carter, and then I have Ms. Berkson, and hopefully we can end this discussion. Mr. Carter.
Okay. Mr. J kind of made me feel bad.
What's that?
I'm not voting against the person.
Okay.
Now, I'm sitting here listening. I'm hard to hear a little bit, but I'm sure I heard what Mr. Schroeder said. It's the condition. Why, if you're going to hire a person and put him in a sinkhole? It's not right. There's nothing wrong with him. I don't have no problem with him. But it's the condition that we need to look at, and the man sat right here and give them to us. And Mr. J, I think I voted on mostly everything where somebody else benefit in this county but mine. I don't want you to look at that. What have be almost 24 years, how much the condition in my neighborhood got satisfied? You look at that. So I think I'm very gracious on voting on other people's problems than my own. And that made me feel bad, because it wasn't the man, but it's the condition that we finna put him in. Now, and I heard last meeting that we can hire the man, but we can't even control it. After we hire him and put him in the position, he can do whatever he wants to do. And we don't have, come on, I never witnessed that. I never seen anybody hire a person and then he could do what he want to do, but we have to pay his fine when he do something wrong. That's not good legislation, you all. That's bad.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
If we put that man in that position, we should have some kind of control over him and protect him in his duties.
Well, it sounds like the whole tax levy from this drainage district is about $140,000 a year. And you saw the pictures of the water up there. Anyone who's driven through there, $140,000 a year isn't going to touch the problem up there. The city of Champaign is responsible for it. They clearly are not willing to pay for it. I don't see what a change in the drainage district board would do. I think it probably has to be settled in court.
Okay, Mr. Esri hasn't spoken, so
sitting here listening to all this tonight, I guess I would submit that the drainage district, as it is currently comprised of the 3 members, is doing its job, maybe well, except for maybe this one area. And I base that on the fact that we aren't getting complaints from flooding from other areas. The fact that all this money is going to the drainage district, who's putting the most water into this drainage district? That's one thing to think of. Farmland doesn't put near as much water into a ditch as an urban area. So until this gets decoupled, I'm sorry, but somehow I would say the urban area needs to pay more into the drainage district. They put more water into it. If I put 5 gallons into it versus 1,000 gallons, who should rightly pay more? That's all I've got to say.
Okay, Diane hasn't spoken. Diane?
I'd like to be allowed to call the question, please.
Second. All right, we have a call to question. Do I have I'd like to have a roll call. Thank you, Mr. Langenheim. A second? Thank you. All right. A yes, okay. A yes is for Mr. Shaw to be reappointed to the Drainage District. I'm sorry.
A yes is to go to the vote, go to the vote.
Oh, okay, right.
Call the question.
Call the question. Yes is call the question.
To go to the vote.
And then go to the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, we go to the vote. We have a roll call. Second. All right, can I have a roll call? A yes reappoints Mr. Shaw to the Fountainhead Drainage District.
Michaels? Yes. Mitchell? Yes. Petrie? No. Quisenberry? Richards?
No.
Rosales?
No.
Schrader?
Yes.
Schwartz? Alex? No. Bergson? Carter? No. Coert? No. Esri?
Yes.
Harper?
Yes.
Hartke?
No.
James?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kibler?
Yes.
Langenheim?
Yes.
Maxwell?
Yes.
McGuire?
Yes.
Kurtz?
Mr. Shaw is reappointed to the Drainage District. Thank you. Do you have anything else there, Mr. Quisenberry? That's it. Any other business? I don't have any. Any new business? I call for adjournment. Motion by Mr. Esri, second Ms. Kibler. All in favor? We are adjourned.